Good evening and welcome to the Monday, January 13th meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission. We'll start with a roll call. Chair Lisa Hanson, present. Vice Chair Jacob Miller.
Present.
Commissioner Darius Daniels is absent. Alder Jim Hutchinson.
Present.
Commissioner Ken Ravinsky.
Present.
Commissioner Emma Fullwilder. Present. And Commissioner Kelsey Lepto is absent.
Online.
Oh, I'm sorry, she's online. So she is present. Yeah. All right, moving on to the approval of the agenda for the Monday, January 13th, 2025 meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Vice Chair Miller. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to approval of minutes. Approval of the minutes from the November 25th, 2024 meeting.
You approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Vice Chair Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then moving on to regular business, and we will start with the public hearing. And this public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or are only providing information in this matter, and your comments or concerns. We ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. And we will now open the public hearing on item number 1. Public hearing on a request to establish a planned unit development located at 1835 Ridge Road and 1820 Frank Street, submitted by Vervicker on behalf of Keen Ridge Holdings LLC, property owner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To familiarize everybody with the area, this is the corner of South Ridge and Lombardi. This is right across the street from Lambeau Field. So a very noticeable and prominent location within the city of Green Bay. This actually has 2 separate parcels that are in question. So the larger parcel here, kind of hard to tell, but there is that standing building, if everyone's familiar with that. That's 820 Frank Street. That's part of this request as well. So this will become one large development site with the consolidation of those parcels. So we'll just continue to speak on them as if it's main parcel because they will be once this is approved. This is an aerial vision. So again, 820 Frank Street here, but showing that entire parcel area, obviously Lambeau Field right next door. Looking at the future land use, you can see that the surrounding neighborhood outside of this commercial strip and the project site are all designated for low density development. Typically our PUDs do coincide with our comprehensive plan. You know, we use the comprehensive plan for all of our base use. However, we are in the midst of redoing our comprehensive plan. And with that, the preliminary draft is showing that that is more appropriate for higher density mixed use, considering its location near not only Lambeau Field, this commercial strip here, you know, the frontage along Lombardi Avenue, and then also keeping in mind some of the development in the area. So this has some preliminary designations for a more dense use than low density. So that's what we are basing that recommendation off of. But just to note that we usually try to keep those in line for PUDs. The existing zoning is office residential. This is kind of one of our mixed use districts, generally has the allowance for some residential uses, the allowance for some commercial uses, with a mid density in comparison to either low density or a downtown district. This is a visual of how it looks now. There is some vacant green space along with some gravel. This is used primarily for temporary game day parking. But you can see here there are some small statue structures on the site. So looking at the site plan, this is what's been proposed. So this is Lombardi Avenue, South Ridge, Thorndale, and Frank Street. The front building, which is called Building A within our reports in the PUD, is a commercial building. The main uses will be retail and commercial in nature, likely offices, things like that. They have not proposed any specific uses. So for the uses that we have allowed, we're going with the downtown district as its base. And then listed in the PUD under section 2D are all the prohibited uses. So I'll go over those just so people know. So everything else that's allowed within downtown would be allowed. And then with the exception of live work units, rooming or boarding houses, shelter facilities, community living arrangements, convents, nursing homes, assisted living, transitional living facilities, all educational uses, all institutional or civic uses, all public service or utility uses, all drive-through facilities, funeral homes, small appliance repair services, currency exchange, pawn shop, and all vehicle service uses. So that really leaves a lot of our retail, commercial, specialized shops, restaurants, those sorts of things, specifically calling out no drive-through facilities. So that would be allowed in the front building. Back building is building B. This is at the corner of Thorndale and Ridge. The first floor would be commercial uses, again, retail office likely, same list of prohibited uses for that space. And then the top 3 floors would be multifamily uses for a total of 24 units for that. So within the staff report in the PUD, the initial height of the commercial building in the front was listed at 75 feet. That was an error. We did receive an updated schematic of the building height, which would be at a maximum of 50 feet. So they're looking at 3 to 4 stories, pretty tall stories in comparison to most buildings. But the maximum height on that would be 64 feet, which is kind of deceiving because it makes it feel like it's gonna be taller at one side. There's actually a slope on that property. So the tallest it would go is 50 feet from the eye level, but the max height on one end would be 64. So it shows here kind of how there's a dip in the building layout here. So 50 feet on that front one, and then the rear we have listed as 52 for building B, it's 53, so a foot difference. So those things would need to be amended within our PUD to make sure that they are matching that updated information. Moving along, this is the rendering for building A. Again, mostly office, retail. We don't have any of the signage as part of this PUD. They would have downtown signage clearance at this point, and then they would come forward if they had any signage changes that they wanted to create. But for right now, they have the downtown clearance. We do have in the PUD and in the staff report, the requirement for the building materials. So we want this to be, very well thought out, really well done. And they've done that within the schematics here. So just making sure that those materials end up matching the building materials once it does get built. The building B, again, has the commercial on the first floor and then residential for the top 3 floors. Again, building materials should match substantially to this. We have those listed within the PUD as well. Some things that I did want to go through. We are looking at this site as the general site plan. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for everyone. So to show some of the access points. So this was proposed back in early fall 24, and it had some differences in the site plan here. So originally they only had a right in and right out onto Ridge Avenue. There were a lot of concerns from the neighborhood that could cause a lot of spillover traffic to exit onto Thorndale and Frank and then take Thorndale to Oneida Street. With the addition of this full access, we believe that won't occur. They're adding a full turn lane along Ridge Road to get that access in and out of this site, and then allowing the full access left turn to get back to Lombardi here. So that should significantly decrease any spillover traffic, just having that full access onto Ridge and to Lombardi. There is a small tenant-only access here. This would go to underground parking for that multifamily building. This is a full access here. There have been some concerns about, lights shining onto the residential properties here, but the exit lane lines up perfectly between these buildings, so it should have very minimal light impact on those properties there. And then again, a full access here on Frank. Per code, parcels are allowed access onto the roads. So this is allowable. There have been some discussions that the neighbors don't want to see those access points, that they want everything to be funneled out just through Ridge or have a Lombardi access. Lombardi access is restricted, and I don't believe that they have access to that anymore. There was temporary access granted in 2016 when a proposal similar to this first came forward. That is no longer viable, so they would have to reapply for that, and state has been very limiting on the access available to Lombardi, so we don't see that as an option. Also removing the access point specifically to Thorndale, I think would cause too much congestion here. All of these decisions for access and transportation and traffic have been made based on an updated TIA. A TIA was done in 2016. During the neighborhood meeting that was done in October, there were comments that, is that too old? It doesn't, take into consideration the new development. It doesn't take into consideration Titletown that was recently developed in Ashwaubenon. So an updated abbreviated TIA was completed that showed all of that, all the impacts for all three of these buildings, because this is all sort of together, both this PUD is only these two. And these were the recommendations that they came forward with. So the TIA summary was part of your packet. It does show that this definitely, the roads can handle that traffic, that most of the traffic will go back out to Ridge Road, either go north or south. And then there were some road improvements, again, shown on there. We did add a condition of approval about those road improvements, though PUDs really don't cover right away typically. We want to make sure that those things are linked with this PUD. We want to make sure that those road improvements from that TIA are represented here. So there is a condition of approval that does show that. I feel like I've been talking for an hour already and I'm not even close, so bear with me. There are some changes that we recommended as staff from this site plan or from what the applicant had asked for. They had some setbacks that they were asking for along for the buildings. Since this is going for more of a downtown feel and we want to make sure that we're getting the most squeeze out of this and also the most green space that we can out of this with the parking that they're looking for, we are recommending a setback of 0 to 5 feet along this corridor and then 10 feet maximum along Lombardi. They did want to do some sort of patio and like outreach on the building here. All that considering that vision triangles still have to be met. So that would be part of the consideration. But with that, we did add a 5-foot buffer, landscaping buffer required around any of the parking areas. So here, not much of an issue because they do have a long throat here for the driveway. This would require a throat of 18 feet minimum, which is required in our code. So that would add a little bit more greenery here. And it really impacts here. So there would be that 5-foot landscape buffer between the sidewalk in the neighborhood and then any parking area that was required. Additionally, there is a pedestrian walkway here that's public right of way. There have been talks about expanding this. I don't know if those will come to fruition. So we do have it listed pretty flexible in the PUD that this buffer area has to be a landscape buffer that's either between 10 and 20 feet. So 10 feet would be the minimum if they still did the expansion of the pedestrian right of way. And then 20 feet maximum if they don't do any expansion. So if we wanted to tighten up that language more, we could, but I feel like that offers the flexibility if that sidewalk was ever expanded, that it doesn't have to be like tied to the PUD, that expansion can happen at any time and does not need to be part of this. That leaves at least a 10-foot minimum landscape buffer between the sidewalk and the building. With that, we also, they would have to meet all of our general parking requirements, which are shown mostly here with the landscape islands, there are greenery requirements, tree requirements, all of our landscaping would still be required as part of this. So initially for impervious coverage, they thought it'd be around 95%. Downtown allows up to 100%. Office residential is only 60%. So there's quite a jump there. But looking at the type of uses and the setbacks that we think should be closer to the building, I think it would be lower than 95%, adding in that throat area here and then the 5-foot buffer along, 20-foot buffer here. I don't have an exact number that would be, but I do believe it would be less than the 95 that's written into the code. If we wanted to be more stringent with that and pick a number, that's totally at your discretion, but right now it's written at 95. So I think that would be it. They are proposing 119 stalls. Currently, there are underground parking stalls here and here. So there'll be a total of 119. We have it written in as 80 minimum. We feel 80 is sufficient for the type of uses that they are proposing. They of course want more parking on site. But I think the 80 minimum at least gives them some wiggle room to play with if they did want to change the design, add more green space, accommodating for the throat area and for that 5-foot setback that we're requiring. I already touched on the TIA briefly, that does have full support and approval from our Department of Public Works, so that's already been cleared by them. With that, staff approved, would recommend approval for that as well. The TIA looks good, all the numbers seem to add up well, so, everything's good there. Also briefly touched on the neighborhood meeting that was held on October 3rd. There were about 60 people in attendance. A lot of people were very concerned about traffic impacts, so I believe we've already touched on that pretty substantially. Another concern was, the original proposal for this had this building here, which is part of the next PUD request, was located here instead. A lot of concerns about spilling over into the single, low density residential neighborhood. This whole area does have R1 zoning, so that would have been a much bigger ask versus the OR zoning. So after some discussions with staff and, after the neighborhood meeting, they did, come together, both of the property owners, to move that building here as part of the request. Normally, we would have one PUD over a whole area like this, but they have separate ownership and wanted 2 separate PUDs, so we allowed them to apply that way. So this is connected to this, but it is not part of this PUD request. But moving that, I think, will appease some of the neighbors, and it definitely helps with our staff recommendations. You know, having things contained to one block makes it more of a development campus. It makes it a lot easier to dictate where traffic is flowing. You know, any sort of extension of any commercial uses into the low density residential neighborhood, we definitely feel should come after our comprehensive plan is done, based on those recommendations, knowing, you know, if we want to expand anything commercial there, that should be done with a lot more forethought than just one singular PUD. So we were really excited to see the movement here. There were quite a few comments submitted online, which are the packets that you received. So again, these comments are likely for this item and for the next item. Since they were all submitted online, you have access to them. These will be forwarded on to the city council as well. If there are any questions on any of the comments, we can go over them now. And there are some people here who would obviously like to speak as well. But I think that most of these comments were in opposition. A lot of the neighbors still feel like traffic has not been addressed adequately. Staff disagrees with that. The TIA was done with the standards that are required. We have full support from our engineering division. The updates that they have made, not only to the site with the access points, but also to the roadways themselves, I think will be really beneficial to slowing down traffic and directing it in the right direction. So we really believe that there will not be very much spillover traffic specifically onto Thorndale. Part of the traffic recommendations, not only have this left turn lane here, but they call for some sort of traffic control at this intersection. Generally, that traffic control, you know, you think of speed tables, you think of extended curve lanes, you know, narrowing the right of way width. All those things are options and could be determined by our Department of Public Works at their expertise with our input as part of this PUD. But generally speaking, we think that they have done a lot of work to try to mitigate the traffic concerns of the neighborhood. So we are still supportive of that TIA update. I think that is it for now.
Okay, all right, thanks, Steph. All right, so now with this public hearing, we're gonna be looking to hear from anyone who wants to speak on this item. I do have a list of people who are not speaking. They were online comments. I do just want to put it into record. There were 15 opposed and 1 in favor. And then I guess I'll start with the list of names that I have, and if there's anyone else wishing to speak, I will ask at the end too. Corey Benke.
Hello,
And yeah, if you could just state your name and address for the record.
Corey Venke, 1213 Shadow Lane. I'm the president of Lombardi Neighborhood Association. And this was a board approved letter that I wrote to the Ms. Hummel and the mayor. I'm writing on behalf of the Lombardi Neighborhood Association regarding the PUD for 1835 Ridge and 1820 Frank, which are scheduled for review tonight. After a formal vote, the Lombardi Neighborhood Association board has approved this letter to express our collective concerns and priorities for the future of our community. The proposed building heights, and just to be fair, 70 to 50 is definitely a lot different than what was proposed. I think a lot of people were freaking out about 70, so 50 is a little better. Just for those of you that don't know, 35 feet is our one height. So we do have buildings on Shadow that are 35 feet. But the proposed building heights in both proposals are completely out of touch with the surrounding area. The buildings are too tall and would disrupt important views, including those of Lambeau Field, a feature cherished by many residents and which serve as a symbolic skyline feature across our entire community. The height and scale are not only incongruent with the surrounding lower profile homes, but also with other commercial properties in the vicinity. This area is surrounded by world-class developments, including Titletown. We believe any new development should match the prestige and character of these modern, pedestrian-focused live, work, play environments. We ask that the building heights be reconsidered to better align with the existing architecture and aesthetic of the neighborhood. Regarding traffic concerns, it is worth noting that on August 16th, 2016, the Green Bay City Common Council denied a request for driveway access on Thorndale Street following staff recommendation and after 3 hours of debate. I actually read the Common Council and it's very long. Given this prior decision, we question why such access would even be considered now, especially when the area has become significantly busier due to ongoing developments. We have traffic, health, and safety concerns, particularly given that an elementary school is part of our neighborhood and will be impacted. Additionally, to minimize commercial traffic flowing into residential areas, we recommend that curb cuts be placed on Lombardi Avenue and Ridge Road, not on Thorndale Street, Frank Street, or Shadow Lane, to preserve the peace and safety of our neighborhood. Finally, we would like to emphasize the need to prioritize pedestrian safety, especially at key intersections like Lombardi Avenue and Ridge Road. We recommend the implementation of smart crosswalks with integrated sensors to ensure pedestrians are given priority, enhancing the walkability and safety of our neighborhood. Large intersections like this must be redesigned to place people, not cars, first in the planning process. Additionally, we'd like to request sidewalks as well as trees as a transition, which I know some of that's in there, along developments along Frank and Thorndale to provide a harmonious transition between any developments and the neighborhood. In conclusion, while we understand and support the need for development, it must be done thoughtfully and in a manner that preserves the unique character of our neighborhood, a character admired by NFL players, tourists, and national sports broadcasters alike. Living in such close proximity to one of the most iconic sports stadiums in the world is a privilege, and it is a combination of residential living and a world-renowned venue that creates a special dynamic found nowhere else on earth. It is imperative that this development preserves that unique identity and fosters sustainable, responsible growth. And the last thing I do want to say is every commercial property on Lombardi Avenue, every single one from Ashland Avenue all the way to the Oneida Reservation has curb cuts on Lombardi Avenue. So I think it's disingenuous to say that curb cuts cannot be placed on Lombardi Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Missy Peterson?
I'm Melissa Peterson. I own a home on 1844 South Oneida Street. I am for this development. I just wanted to say that I'm sorry, I'm cold. I'm thinking the neighbors south of Titletown probably went through the same type of back and forth. And they've got condos peering down over their backyards. I'm sure they were worried about the traffic also. But it doesn't seem to be a problem. We live by an NFL stadium, and it seems the area has changed a lot in the past 10 years. A large percent of the homes here are either rental occupied, short-term rentals, or the owner occupied, with being 50%, under 50% in this neighborhood. If people are shopping or working at this development, they wouldn't be cutting through the neighborhood. They would be taking Ridge Road. If they're coming there, they take Ridge. They want to leave. They're going to want to leave to get to Lombardi or Highway 41, or not a very good chance that a whole bunch of cars are going to be traveling through the neighborhood. I'm for the development for these reasons, because if we keep putting off this development at this corner, you never know what we're going to get. We could get a 7-story parking lot. And another thing, if people look back at the plans for Titletown, the plans there showed tons of shopping, tons of restaurants. We didn't quite get that. So I think with Tim's development, those will be the shops that tourists will want to come and see. So it'll add to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Wood,
Mike Wood, 1611 Frank Street. I'm not fully against development. What I'm totally against is the height that they're proposing. Because if we start there, remember, across the street is the Lindall Funeral Home, which is bought by the Green Bay Packers. You start at 60 feet, you'll be at 80 feet, you'll be at 90 feet. You're closing the residential area in. We're becoming nothing but a dark zone, if you want to call it that. And I don't know what his plans are in regards to what type of shops he's looking at. Or what type of hours he's going to keep. Is it going to be restaurants? Is it going to be bars? We are unknown on this fact of what's all going in there. And you're talking 66 feet. The people on top of of that building could watch the Packer game on the inside. And that's my concern, is the height of the buildings and what could happen across the street also. And then what are we going to do? We already got one driveway on Ridge, and then we'll have another one on Ridge, and then we won't be able to access on St. Agnes, and then Ridge Road will become a bottleneck. Just keep that in mind, please. Okay?
thank you. Debbie Jakes,
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to say thank you for having this meeting tonight regarding this important issue in our neighborhood. First, I want to say that I've lived in our neighborhood for about 23 years now. Initially, when I bought my house, I live on 1839 South Oneida Street, and 1845, it was a daycare center. So I've taught preschool for about 25 years. And this was the perfect opportunity for me to stay home with my son. And anyway, through the years, about 11 years ago, we've turned our property over to a short-term rental property. So I'm kind of like the first face a lot of people see when they first come into Green Bay, and engaging with them and showing them around like where, you know, what's so great and fantastic about Green Bay. We live across the street from Lambeau Field. Like all of us, you know, we bleed green and gold. And some people here don't. They want to oppose this project. They think it's the worst thing ever. And I think what Mr. Keenan has proposed, and he is an asset to our community. I mean, he's had his restaurant for years. He's increased our tax base. He offers jobs. He, you know, just had property on Ashland. We now have a children's hospital coming to Green Bay. I mean, how huge is that if you have kids and young adults? That's something we haven't had before. And this is all thanks to Mr. Keenan. So I don't think he's given enough credit for everything that he has done for our city. Living at my house, so our neighborhood is not even close to what it used to be 10 years ago. I mean, initially these houses were supposed to be for just, you know, wasn't the short-term rental business as it is now with VRBO and Airbnb. But this was unique. We were unique and so different from every other NFL team out there. All of our houses are decorated for the Packer enthusiasts. You know, when Brett Favre left, there were so many people wanting to come into Green Bay because they wanted to see one last view of Brett Favre. And that's why, you know, I opened and started my business, was because then there wasn't enough hotel space. And well, I think when everyone thought and saw what we were charging, all of a sudden, you know, houses were being torn down. Our neighborhood was ripped apart. You have no idea what we deal with on Packer weekends, on Shadow Lane, and our surrounding neighborhood. You have no idea. We have cars coming and going. They're talking about opposing traffic. Traffic's a problem. Come down and see what we deal with on Packer games. You know what? We've accepted the fact that our neighborhood is changing, and it's changing for the better because the NFL is growing here in Green Bay. We have the draft coming in, you know, 3 months. And it's like, either you kind of like evolve with it. That's just the way of, you know, it's just life. It's not like, I don't think Team Keenan hasn't taken into consideration, like, you know, you know, the concerns and that type of thing.
Right.
But I think that, you know, he has been very accommodating. He has been very patient, to say the least. You know, I'd hate to see another businessman like him, you know, walk away from a project like this because,
It's time.
oh, I just want to say one more thing. But I just want to say we have such a housing problem here in the city of Green Bay, and he can alleviate that problem. So I don't know why we would not work with him to help that problem. So, thank you.
Sarah Drager,
Hello, my name is Sarah Drager. I live at 1054 Shadow Lane. I've lived in the neighborhood for 57 years. I've seen how it has truly, Lambeau has developed. In all honesty, with how we have evolved with after Brett Favre and after winning the Super Bowls, things like that. In all honesty, the south side of Lombardi really has not done much development. If we took a picture back in 1999, when I bought my house on Shadow Lane, it really wouldn't be too different. I don't even think the funeral home improved or did anything other than it. I feel like it's all Ashwaubenon. And this is a chance for Green Bay to develop on our side for the Packer games. Now, I'm not also talking about just, I'm for it, as you probably can tell. We have concerts. We have tons of concerts at the Rush Center that my friends, my families will come. They'll try to park. They'll park in the neighborhood. I was told when I first moved there by my elderly neighbors, well, if you don't care for the Packers, either leave that day or that weekend, you know, and deal with it, you know, or embrace it. So I did, I embraced it. And then the renovation of the parking lot. So then we don't have much for parking. Well, that also helps. He's also helping for parking issues too. And it keeps getting smaller. I just wonder, did Titletown have this big of a deal too? This has been many years. I was here 4 or 5 years ago when he just was trying to get a driveway. When we were trying to push for an Airbnb. So I can't believe this has taken him this long for this type of development. I understand the height and all that. You lose what you have, then cut down some trees. I would love to see Lambeau from my corner too. And I know that's not possible. We can't always have what we want, but how the Packers and the Rush Center and all that. I would love for my friends and family not to have to go to Stadium View, standing room only, because we get their first quarter. Have another place that opens up where we have more room where we can go to when there's state volleyball, when there's other things. It's always packed to get reservations too. So I'm definitely for it. And I think he's great for Green Bay too. Thank you for listening.
Tricia Garrison,
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening, Madam Chair and the Plan Commission. My name is Tricia Garrison. I reside at 1260 Thorndale Street. I am in support of economic development and ask that it be done in a thoughtful way. So as this is presented this evening, I would not be in favor of it as it is. However, just a few things we wanted to ask for. As Corey mentioned, I am a member of the Lombardi Neighborhood Association as well. We would ask for the driveways to go out onto Ridge and Lombardi and ask for a green buffer. And then I also agree, it's wonderful that housing is being addressed. I know there's a lot of data that shows there's a housing shortage for good affordable housing for families in Green Bay. So therefore, for these high rises, the request would be to not have short-term rentals in those high rises and have that be tied to the PUD. So that's a request we would make. And then given that how important this corner is to our community and what it represents and the domino effect that would occur from kind of what is allowed here. This is sort of a legacy vote tonight. So I will ask for a roll call vote. I would request that for this evening's votes. And thank you very much for the opportunity to address.
Cheryl Wolf,
I'm Cheryl Wolf. My address is 1203 Liberty. I would like to to kind of talk a couple issues that I have with the development. First of all, I spoke against the development back in 2016 because of the traffic concerns. I feel like what we talked about in 2016 is still valid today. With this development, there's more properties on that piece, that parcel. So if it wasn't a good idea to have the driveways on Thorndale and Frank back in 2016, now you're adding more buildings, more people in and out. I would love that those driveways be reconsidered. We've spoken with the principal of St. Mark's School regarding some of the concerns that they have. They were not notified of this development. It was the neighborhood association that went to them. So the feedback that we got was that they were concerned about the traffic as well. I understand that the traffic study says that no one will take Thorndale, but we're all human. If all the traffic is going out Ridge and you need to get somewhere, you're going to take the path of least resistance and it's going to be on Thorndale. It's human nature. Like, I understand the study says not, but let's be real. Could we bring up the picture of the development? No. No. So, on the development, on the main office building, there's a loading dock. Nothing has been said about that, but what type of vehicles use a loading dock? It's not your Amazon driver. It's not your local FedEx driver dropping off small packages. Only large trucks need a loading dock. The loading dock in the picture is on Frank Street. That's not a truck route. So in order for trucks to get to that loading dock, they're going to have to come down Frank Street. They're going to come down Thorndale. They're going to come down Frank. I don't feel like that was addressed in the discussion here. That's one thing I would like taken under consideration. And then just also reiterating that the neighbors are not against development. We don't want to look at that empty gravel pit lot any more than anyone in this room does. Like, we want to see development. We are just asking that it be cohesive with our current neighborhood. When you watch an NFL game on TV, one of the things that's always mentioned is how this iconic stadium is located in a neighborhood. We would love that the development fit within the current neighborhood. That's all we're asking. Thank you.
I think this is Oki Baranowski.
It's Gary.
Oh, Gary. Gary, it looks like Oki because I see Gary, like Gary and Oki both live together, so.
Wow. It's usually my last name that gets hammered. I have a property at 1239 Shadow Lane that I've had for 19 years, and I'm also a participant in the Lombardi Neighborhood Association. So I really stand behind their letter, and I think there are great points made by everybody. I came here for a couple of reasons. One was the height, which I thought was crazy, and it's good to see that come down. But my other two concerns was the property on Frank and Shadow, the corner that is now moved to the main parcel. So that's awesome. I wanted to say thank you. And my final concern was that we had some kind of plan, if it was to tip into the residential portion, not in that main lot on the corner, that there was a plan. And you mentioned that, you know, it got moved and it would be planned going forward if there was anything. So basically my points are satisfied. I think parking or the driveways is the last one. I think people who live in the neighborhood have an issue with, and I support them as well. So thank you for all the progress that was made. I didn't know all these changes were made.
Thank you very much. Ellen Merriman.
Good evening. My name is Ellen Merriman. I am opposed to this. I live at 1183 Thorndale Street. Some of the points that I'd like to address is you had mentioned that this would give a downtown feel. If I wanted to live in downtown, I'd move downtown. One of the things they rave about on national television is the uniqueness of the area. I feel Ashwaubenon has sold out, and I would hate to see Green Bay do the same. I understand Mr. Keene has a liquor license. Is that going to be considered that he would be given a liquor license in that area? I don't feel it's appropriate that close to school areas, that close to residential. Something that has not been addressed. Rainwater runoff. My parents bought that house when it was built. We have lived in that house our entire lives, and our basements used to flood. Now, with that much pavement, where is the water going? It's not going underground because you said that's underground parking. Where does that water go? I know a traffic study was done. However, when was it done? Was it done in the summertime? Do you realize the first school bus pulls up at 10 minutes to 6 in the morning and the last one goes through at 4:30 in the afternoon? That's a lot of bus traffic. There is not enough room for 2 buses to pass with cars parked on either side. How does a semi come through from that loading dock? You know it's going to because it cannot make the turns onto Ridge Road. These are all concerns that I think we really need to look at. This is a residential area. It needs to be kept as a residential area. Thank you.
James McGrath Senior.
1137 Thorndale Street since 1971. I know the neighborhood. Our street used to flood all the time prior to the Green Bay Packers putting the retaining tanks under the ground in. We need to have an underground retaining tank on that property because between Oneida Street and Gross Avenue, we used to flood all the time. There's going to be more water coming down the street. We are the low street with streets north and south of us flowing all the water down Oneida Street to our point and to Gross Avenue. We need a retaining underneath. The traffic, solution for the traffic for everybody. Make Thorndale Street from Ridge to the corner of Frank Street a cul-de-sac. Shut off the exits coming to Frank Street. The vehicles will have to exit, when they exit either Ridge Road or Thorndale Street, they're going to have to go up to Ridge Road and it'll keep all the vehicles out of the neighborhood. A very inefficient cost to keep the traffic from going past St. Mark's School, going down to another street to move out of the area. A cul-de-sac is the answer, keeps the neighborhood safe, and yet it allows them 2 exits to get into their property on that corner. Thank you for your time, and I hope you listened to what I just said.
Thank you. Janet Angus.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello? Oh, okay, great. Sorry. I'm sorry I'm not there in person tonight, but I'm not available. I have a home at 1804 Spence Street that has been in my family since the early 1960s. I filed comments that are pretty detailed, and I would appreciate if you would read all of them. I did spend a fair amount of time on preparing those. And since I only have 3 minutes to speak, I will not be able to get to even the bullet points of those comments that I did prepare. USA Today recently ranked all 32 NFL stadiums from best to worst. Lambeau Field came in second. Nancy Armour, a columnist for USA Today Sports, praised Lambeau and said what makes Lambeau so unique is the surrounding area it resides in. She said, for those not fortunate enough to have been there, it's set in the middle of a neighborhood. There are people for whom Lambeau is their backyard. It's the perfect blend of quaint old world charm and modern glitz. There's nothing else in the NFL like it. This is a neighborhood. The developer is a good businessman who is trying to get the most out of his investment. However, Mr. Keene purchased a block, 2.78 acres of residential properties, numerous homes and two office buildings. All were 1- and 2-story buildings. The City of Green Bay 2022 Smart Growth Plan designates this area for low-density residential uses. I believe the smart growth plan needs to be followed. At this time, it has not been amended or changed. The plan is not followed. It would appear to be a case of spot zoning. This property is not in downtown Green Bay. It doesn't need to have a downtown feel. It's a residential area. It's what Lambeau Field is all about. Parking is an issue. This has been detailed in my comments. The total square footage of Building A seems to be in excess of 150,000 square feet. It's a large building and will require many parking spots. If you use 300 square feet for one spot, this results in 500 parking spots that are required. Building B, which is the apartment building on the back part of the lot, seems to require at least 41 parking spots. Total parking spots for the proposed PUD is at 183 parking spots, including underground and surface. Where are all these cars going to park? On the street? Lambeau Field? I haven't seen a parking study. There are shops that are zoned commercial right now over on Holmgren Way to Ashland Avenue. Build this project over there. Shopping, everything else, it's all commercial use on the other side. This is a neighborhood. Ridge Road is going to be widened for a turn lane. Where's the property coming from for the additional street expansion? The sign on the west side of the building is huge. Will this have a domino effect up and down Lombardi Avenue? Will property owners be allowed to have large signs in their yards and to advertise on their fences? We already have problems with the backing up of storm sewers in the area. The impervious surface for this lot is 95%.
Angus, your
What will
time.
be done? Thank you.
John Cordry?
I want to thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is John Cordry. I own the property at 1288 Thorndale. Since you can't get it back on the screen, I am directly across from the driveway on Thorndale. I will suffer at night if this driveway is put in. Lights flashing constantly. I keep on hearing where everyone will take Ridge, they won't take Thorndale. They will. If nobody's going to take Thorndale, don't put the driveway in. That was my main concern when Tim bulldozed all the residential houses. We've owned the house since 2010. It was a beautiful neighborhood, quiet. Now with the proposal that is being made, a commercial proposal was once a residential area. One of my main concerns, of course, is the Thorndale driveway exit and entrance. Another concern is stormwater, which everyone brought that up. Also the height of the buildings. Again, it was a residential area when we purchased the property. Now it's 50, they want 50-foot tall structures. Again, I'm at 1288. This building that's going up on the corner of Frank and Thorndale will literally block the sun out. I mean, forget about my view of Lambeau. I won't see sun again. So, I mean, that's how large this building is. Number two, it's going to be a short stay or a hotel. I call it a mini hotel in what was a commercial or a residential area. Definitely not what we had bargained for when we purchased the property. You know, I hate to sound selfish, but the size of that structure literally should not be put in what was a residential area. You're pulling in a huge structure right into the residential area. And people will take the access to go out Thorndale. They'll go down Frank, they'll go down Shadow because there's no stop sign on Shadow. So, I mean, that is a huge issue for us. That was my main concern about the development would be the traffic for a commercial structure going into the Thorndale, the Frank and the Shadow area. But now with this motel, mini motel, going up, you not only have the size, but you also have all these, units right in a residential area. Thank you.
Brad Reimer.
Brad Reimer of Veerbicker, former Mound Associates. We're at 400 Security Boulevard, representing Tim Keen as the applicant in this project. I just want to, I guess, touch on a couple points that were brought up already. And I know Stephanie did an amazing job presenting this with everything that we've done, working with the city to make adjustments. But traffic in the area, I mean, we did the TIA. The recommendations in there involved traffic calming measures, dedicated turn lanes, things like that. I know one comment was, where would the right of way come for that dedicated turn lane into the site? From Tim, that would come into our site. The center turn lane along Ridge, and then also the corners of Frank and Thorndale. Through the TIA, we've made recommendations or a couple options of what the city could potentially do there to slow traffic, divert traffic. That same thing could be applied to Spence and Thorndale. I don't know that the city has a lot of these traffic calming measures in place. Maybe this is something we try, and it might evolve into other parts of the city. On the traffic topic, Lombardi Avenue access was denied by the Brown County Highway Commissioner. I have an email to that. The heights obviously were lowered from the initial plan. I think that was a good thing to that came out of the neighborhood meeting. So, and the heights that we're going with are still much lower than the Titletown district. So we're kind of stepping things down. We know you cannot see inside Lambeau from the third story of a building. Lambeau is pretty tall. One other thing, moving Mike, the next PUD you'll see from the duplex on the east side of Frank to the northeast corner of the site now, I think was a huge a deal to appease the neighborhood meeting as well. Stormwater management, we were planning on doing underground stormwater management facilities there under the pavement. It's not under the building. And then that would flow directly into the storm sewer pipe. So other than that, we are available obviously after this public hearing is closed to answer any other questions or concerns that you might have. So thank you very much.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
Excuse me, this is Janet Angus. Could I ask for an additional minute of time to address the property located on the corner of Frank and Thorndale?
Ms. Angus, your three.
It's a step.
Yeah, your 3 minutes are up.
But it's a separate and distinct parcel that needed to be commented on, and there just wasn't enough time.
That's another public hearing on that separate PUD.
On item number 3, or
Yes.
number 3 is a public hearing.
Yeah.
Oh, and we'll be able to comment on it at that point?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm sorry I interrupted. I just had that question. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You can just come to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
I'm Tracy Fleming. I would live at 1177 Thorndale Street. I wasn't gonna talk today because I'm really nervous about this, but the one thing that he had brought up when he addressed everybody is that, you know, we're doing this, it's all in conjunction with everything, but they're right, it's too high. When they bought this, it was all residential. It should stay somewhat close to residential. They're going commercial with it. It's not commercial property, or it shouldn't be commercial in a residential. That's just wrong. And it takes away from the value of our houses. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
Me. I know my time is up, but can it be noted, I'm hearing a lot of this This is not residential anymore, it's all short term.
And Ms. Jakes, the floor is closed. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
What's the unmute?
Is it star 6 for unmute if they're calling in? I think that's right now.
Step 6.
There are two, no, there are two comments in the chat. Would you like me to read those out loud?
Yeah, I guess that's,
Okay,
do we need a name and address for the record or no?
I can just read them.
That's fine.
From Erica, is there a traffic plan for Packer game days with traffic on Ridge exit be funneled north on Ridge only? My concern is that those days would force more cars down Thorndale. And from DJWS, if residents wanted a downtown feel, wouldn't they live downtown? Oh, and another. From Amy Van Geem, the stormwater system cannot currently handle the quantity of water during rainstorm or excessive lengths of raining on Thorndale Street. And our streets flood at the end of crossroads of Thorndale and Gross.
Right. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item?
Is it the item of number 3 or?
Yeah.
We are.
Is there anyone who has not spoken who would wish to speak at this time? Three. All right, thank you. All right, I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 2. Consideration with possible action on a request to establish a planned unit development located at 1835 Ridge Road and 1820 Frank Street, submitted by Verbicker on behalf of Keen Ridge Holdings LLC property.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will try to address any comments that have not yet been addressed. So concerning the heights, office residential is the base zoning here. The maximum height in OR is 35 feet. So this is a 15-foot minimum expansion from that. However, within the OR district, you are allowed to get a conditional use permit to exceed the maximum heights with no maximum given. So in OR, they would be able to apply to exceed that. Obviously, a conditional use permit that would come before the board, but something we can also do under the PUD regulations. We do feel that the heights are appropriate, especially given the reduction that was shown on that commercial building. The height of Lambeau Field is 7 stories.
More of that.
Yeah, she's tall. And as mentioned, the title fund district has some fairly tall buildings. So the idea of having these kind of scaled back is we try to do that like beach view effect, right? You want to make sure that people have the opportunity to still see over that. Again, I'd also like to point out that the placement of these buildings was really strategic. They're done at the corners and then along the frontage on purpose to still allow some visibility through the neighborhood. So you can still get some sight lines with those buildings. So, concerning anything related to sight lines, that's not really a concern of ours when it comes to land use. But this still does offer some of that there. Same with shadow effects, 50 stories is not that tall. It's not going to cast a shadow on someone's property to never see the sun again. So that shouldn't be a concern of this, especially considering the right of way distance in between those properties. There was a comment about the short-term rentals. We do have a map here. Let me load it up. Oh. Okay, that's not gonna work. We did have a map created about all the short-term rentals because there's a lot of people on both sides. Well, this is all short terms, it's not short terms, there's rentals. There are quite a few in this neighborhood. I mean, it kind of organically changed. Back in 2002, the planning staff during our current comprehensive plan process wanted to update this area to be a little bit more high density, mid density. That was ultimately denied, but as part of that we knew that the change was going to happen either way. You know, our plan could either show it or it was going to happen organically, and how it happened organically were through these short-term rentals. So there are quite a few in the neighborhood, but it doesn't really matter on our end if it's, you know, it's still a low density use. Doesn't really matter who occupies it, because there are people here who own short-term rentals who are still here, so they still have a stake in that neighborhood. So something else that they had brought up was wanting to restrict the ability to have short-term rentals in this development. Dave can probably speak more eloquently on this, but we cannot do that as a city. That is not allowed. So the total number of residential units is only 32. So even if every one of them was rented out on a short-term basis, it's only 32 units. It's not a large capacity like a hotel would have for a number of units. And I also think it's important to note that the residential uses are against all the residential, the R1 zoning. So this is only 8 units, and this would have 24 total units. So the commercial uses are primarily restricted to Lombardi outside of the first floor here along Bridge. So, you know, the developer was clearly thoughtful in putting the commercial along the commercial corridor and making sure to back up to the neighborhood with residential uses in that multi-use buildings. We already touched on the stormwater management. Quite a few people brought up the school, which is St. Mark's. It's at the end of Thorndale by Oneida. That's 1,400 feet away. So that was well outside of our notification area. And not something that we typically consider when the schools are that far away. There are some other schools within a mile of here. St. Mark's is the closest. This should not have any impact on them. And again, discussing the access. The reason why the full access onto Thorndale is needed to reduce the amount of traffic in the neighborhood is because if people are turning left onto here, this, you know, let's pretend this is backed up, going both ways, though that probably wouldn't happen. People could take this, make a left onto Thorndale, and then use Ridge as that access point again. So this would still get people in and out of the site using only this portion of Thorndale, not requiring them to turn down an unknown residential neighborhood to get out to Oneida. So we understand that people have that feeling because especially during game day or special events, people are driving anywhere that they want to, and it does feel very chaotic at times. But we can't really take game day as the basis for how traffic will perform. That's not how we've done any of the past projects over here. Game day is its own separate beast. We have a robust traffic plan for a reason there that the Green Bay Police Department performs and sees through. So none of this has been based on game day predictions because those numbers just aren't relatable to an everyday situation. I think that I would have to have the applicant talk about the loading dock and vehicular access. The loading dock area is down here. So I believe that they were talking about having Thorndale be the main access for loading, but I'm not sure. So they would have to specify or clarify that for you all. And yeah, they already touched on the stormwater. So I think that's most of the public comments. I hear a lot of them about the height. We still feel that the height is very appropriate for this area. You know, it's the difference between a 2-story residential house and then going up to a 4-story multifamily building. And this is so close to that commercial area that we feel that that's still an appropriate ask, especially considering the height reduction on that Lombardi one as well.
One thing, so the only other thing that I think was talked about that you may not have addressed was cul-de-sacking Thorndale. I'm going to address that. In the traffic impact analysis, there is multiple enhancements as Stephanie had mentioned. And at that Thorndale intersection, Thorndale and Frank, it does call up for enhanced crosswalks and traffic calming. So not closing the street, but calming the traffic. Now, traffic calming, there's a lot of different ways of traffic calming. You can narrow the street, you can do bump outs, you can do speed tables. So that would be something public works would have to look at.
Oh, and another thing were the uses. You know, they didn't give us specific uses here, but the uses that are listed within the PUD, they're very close to what OR already allows for. OR allows for the multifamily, they allow for commercial uses, retail uses. They allow for restaurants. So I'm not sure if the liquor license will be used at this site. It could be, something the applicant could, speak to if restaurants and bars are gonna be part of that plan. But we allow that as part of the PUD, because we would be supportive of those uses there. And then the total parking on site, I think I misspoke before, it's 183 proposed, so 119 surface, 46 under building A and 18 under building B. So the only real requirement that we have right into the PUD is that 80 total minimum would be required. Again, they're proposing 183, and that 24 spaces are required for building B because of that multifamily use having 24 units. So they have 18 underground, they would have to have the additional spaces on surface lots. I think that's it now.
And this is quite a bit different than the design that came forward in 2016.
Yes, different uses, different design, different access points. So the only thing that was a holdover from 2016 was that TIA, because it's the same parcel, which again, they updated, so. None of this is really from that original
It-
plan.
yeah. I remember that.
Yes. Me too.
Current state on site for stormwater, I'm guessing there's no facilities. With it being a gravel lot, besides maybe just the street storm.
That would be my best guess, because there were single family residential buildings here, they wouldn't have had a big facility to.
Well, no, I mean, that parcel had businesses on it. There were business buildings on that too. I mean, there were houses too, but I mean, there was a business.
Yeah, most of this was all the residential.
That was
back
residential
here.
in the front, yeah.
Yeah, so staff doesn't have any concerns. Stormwater management is always taken care of during site and building plan. That goes to our engineering department. They run all the fancy numbers that I don't know how to calculate, and, you know, they make sure that those plans work, so. Between that and then the buffering that we're requiring with the landscaping and then the landscape buffer here. They have plenty of opportunities to capture that water. So with that, staff is recommending approval. With the following conditions, that the two parcels be combined for this PUD to be in effect. And that the right-of-way improvements that are shown as part of that TIA are installed as part of this PUD. So all the changes obviously get run through our Department of Public Works. That is typically how this is run. Again, PUDs don't usually include any right-of-way things, but we thought it was important to note here because it was such an important piece of the puzzle for traffic calming in the neighborhood.
Motion open floor to address the developer.
Second.
Motion by Vice Chair Miller, second by Commissioner Vinsky, open the floor for the developer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll start here. Looking at the loading dock area and those facilities there, I guess two questions. Access, where would trucks be routed and would it be posted? And then secondarily, the landscape buffer, I guess on Frank and Shadow right there, is gonna be some sort of a berm. What are we looking at there for the landscaping?
Let's do landscape first because it's fresh on my mind. Yeah, so with the landscape buffer that they're requesting along Frank, there would potentially be a short berm with plantings, something like that. Along the sidewalk, there's some pretty good grading issues that will have to be dealt with there. So there should be a slope, landscaped slope in that area that soften down to the sidewalk. Yep. Probably short of the sidewalk. I know that sidewalk has some stormwater issues, but we're also not capturing anything on site right now. So that will be fixed as part of this project. So it should soften that. And also you'll notice there's a big bulb out on Shadow and Frank right now that has been vacated. That'll get reconstructed in that area. So that'll be a new terrace, everything in there. So that it should soften that visual impact to the building from Shadow Lane.
Okay.
Loading dock was something that was just put in by the architect. Obviously, they need something to pick up trash that would be enclosed within the building. I think smaller box trucks, depending on who the tenants are for that building. I don't anticipate, and we can get Tim, I don't anticipate semis. I don't think you would get one in and out of there. It'd be a short one, if anything. Frank and Shadow, or Frank and Thorndale, I don't know if they're, large vehicles are even allowed on there right now. The access onto Ridge Road works. I mean, we can get through the site, and back out, with vehicles of size.
That's all I have.
Got a question regarding stormwater issues. I always like to see innovative ways of dealing with storm, if possible. Stormwater. I know you can go under the parking lot and have storage.
Mhm.
Is there any plans on having some of that storage seep into the ground?
Yeah, there would be infiltration for that as well. Timed infiltration as long as spilling over into the storm sewer system.
Okay.
Yep.
So actually, by this development, you'll somewhat be not only containing, but managing the flow down. into-
Lessening, if anything,
Lessening
yeah,
the flow off the site.
and the quality as well. Yep,
Okay.
would be much better.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for the applicant?
Did you want this?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Motion to close the floor, second.
Motion by Vice Chair Miller, second by Commissioner Vinsky. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I do have some discussion points if you want me to take it off on.
That would be it.
Okay. So based on some of the changes that we had discussed that happened today, section 2F1 does need to be amended. Because that discusses the building heights. So that would be, building A not to exceed, 64 feet in height. I don't know how we want to, I mean, we could creatively write that in, that 50 feet is actually the building height, but 64 where it slopes, you know, like I can
Right.
play with that tomorrow if need be.
Okay.
And then building B not to exceed 53 foot is what they're asking, not 52. So that one would need to be addressed if we want to approve as they're proposing. And then the impervious surface in section E2, I have right now is 95%. That was another point of discussion for you all. And then the parking is in section G at 80 stalls required. Those were the main topics that I wanted to bring to your attention outside of just general discussion.
What was the first section for height?
2F1.
The building, I mean, the businesses that were here before, those were office buildings. But they were just one story, weren't they?
Yes.
I'm just trying to think how long it's been that there's been actual buildings on that. And it's been since
2016. And so
And I can certainly appreciate neighbors being concerned about the height of it. I mean, I think. Knowing what's going on, living around Lambeau Field, knowing the development that's been going on. I mean, I do. I'm just excited. I would be excited just to have one little corner of development where Schwabenheim has all of that. You know, I certainly, I can appreciate, being close and still wanting to have that view. I do think that the way that this building was thought out, I think. And this is just, of course, my opinion, but I feel like you still will definitely be able to see Lambeau over that. It's huge. And the way this building is being oriented at the very front of the parcel, right up against Lombardi, I mean, think a development like this was something that was gonna be expected for that parcel. So.
Were you looking to make a revision to parking? Is that why you brought it up?
Oh, just for conversation.
Okay.
I mean, staff is comfortable with the 80 minimum. I know that other people may want more, but I mean, they're proposing well over that, so that's just a minimum number.
Okay, yeah. Cause you said 183 total with the underground and every, or 183.
183 is proposed right now.
Right,
That will naturally be reduced with the requirement for the road here,
right.
because that's not shown, so that'll take out a couple spots.
Cause you said like 119 exterior parking, but you really only want 8.
It's not that I want.
Right, I'm sorry, but
Minimum would be.
minimum would be
sufficient,
right.
yes,
So we're well within as far as parking.
definitely. They have a lot of flexibility for parking right now, which I think will be good when trying to, do the setbacks and landscaping.
Did I miss anything in terms of traffic calming on either Thorndale or other? There's nothing that we're ready to be
No.
required.
We do not want to add any right-of-way details into the PUD. That's to be taken care of by the Department of Public Works. So that's why we have it as the condition that those things need to be taken care of,
Okay.
of the zoning approval, but not written into the PUD language. That would be under some sort of a developer's agreement with the Department of Public Works to make those updates. And then all traffic calming that gets determined through the Department of Public Works. So it, I think a good idea would be those curb extensions. Some other people think that those raised speed bumps, speed tables, there's lots of different ways to calm traffic. I mean, landscaping calms traffic. So that discussion would be left to the professional engineers. But as recommended in that TIA summary that was in your packet.
Okay, so we're looking at section 2F1 for the heights, revise those 64 for building A, 53 for building B.
Yes.
There wasn't a change from the previous.
No, right now they are requesting 95%. That's how much we feel comfortable allowing. Just food for thought for your discussion. If you wanted to reduce that or all, that would reduce the parking though. Which. People like the parking, so.
No, I think 95 is fine there. So move to approve with the amendment to section 2F1 for heights, revising building A to 64, building B to 53 maximum height.
You have the conditions?
With all conditions that are recommended by staff.
Second.
Motion by Vice Chair Miller, second by Commissioner Vinsky.
Chair.
Do we have any? further? Go
Oh,
ahead,
just want to
Alderman
speak on the
Weary.
motion. I was waiting until you had a motion on the floor. Right,
Go ahead.
sorry, Chair Alderman Weary, it's my District 8. Been happy to represent it since 2002. It's been a lot of change in 22 years, right? I mean, from when I first started, purely residential, tiny little commercial, and there was commercial there. Mr. Venisi's buildings were there, a long time ago, and he knew at some time himself that it was going to change, it wasn't going to stay the same. And I know more than anybody, especially this past year, change is inevitable, and it's going to happen. Now, it doesn't mean you let it go willy-nilly, and I think what we're doing here, as opposed to what happened 8 years ago, is the traffic. That's a big one for me. It was just thrown out there, and there were really never any plans to deal with it like we're doing here, and I'm glad to see that those are going to be required, whether, not in the PUD, but in another process. Could you bring up that slide again with the traffic calming measures? I think there's another one. You did, in the packet, but
In the TIA.
yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have that.
Okay. And I think it does a really good job for those who, want to look at it. It narrows it down from really what's a lane and a half, 2 lanes down to one in each direction on those corners. And so it really makes it look unappealing to go into, and it does work. I think with requiring that, with adding the turn lane on Ridge Road and having, I think there's a left turn only going on to the Thorndale coming out. There's gonna be signage left turn only. If there's anything else through creative we can think of in the next week or before it gets to the other committees, I'd be all open to that. I'm very happy that the height came down from 75 to basically 50, and on the one end it's higher because of the way the land goes down. That is excellent. You know, we can't really disapprove of things because you lose your line of sight. That's something they could plant trees there. They could plant great trees that grow much taller than that. You'd lose your sight anyway. So that's a tricky thing to work with. I can tell you my feedback on this. There's a lot of people in the district, granted, who might not live right on top of it, but some who do, who want something to happen. They've been waiting for something to happen, and they don't necessarily want to come out and say that because they don't want neighbors angry with them. So I can tell you, it's about an even Steven, maybe a little bit more in favor from what I've heard. I think we should move ahead with something. Let's be thoughtful and careful on it. And I think we've done a good job of going back and forth over the last couple of years, over the last couple of months. That one smaller unit that we're going to talk about was going to be clearly in a residential area, and that was way out of whack. And I'm glad that got moved back. We'll talk about that next, but I'm glad the building got moved all the way to the street so that your line of sight is lowered, right? That's purely residential. I think we have to look for the future and try and guide it the best we can. So I'm gonna get another kick at this as well council next week. So if there's things that come up that we can still change, we might do that. But I appreciate your time and looking at that. Thanks.
We have a motion on the floor by Vice Chair Miller, seconded by Commissioner Lindsay. Any further discussion?
There was a request for a roll call vote. So we vote one at a time. Do we ever do that?
You can.
Totally up to you.
Well, then I would say let's do a roll call vote. I make that,
No, I can just, I can just do whatever.
Yeah.
I can just do whatever I want. All right, Vice Chairman,
Don't forget Kelsey's on.
but no, I know she's on there too. Vice Chair Miller,
Aye.
Alder Jim Hutchinson,
Aye.
Commissioner Ravinsky,
Aye.
Commissioner Fullwilder. Aye. Commissioner Lutzo.
Might be muted.
No.
You're up here.
Did you hear me?
No.
Nope.
Oh, aye.
And Chair Hansen, aye. So then that will go forward, then the city council is that 21st. Moving on to item number 3, which is a public hearing, and the public hearing has been properly posted and notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that you, after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, and whether you favor, oppose, or only providing information. We ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Planning Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will now open public hearing on item number 3. Public hearing on a request to establish a planned unit development located at 1835 Ridge Road, submitted by Verbicker on behalf of WISC Short-Term Rentals LLC property owner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, same area, different corner. The location that we're gonna be talking about is a yet to be created parcel here at the corner of Thorndale and Frank. So a little bit of an aerial view here, not where the current house is located, but where the old parcel was here. Same background for the neighborhood, future land use currently showing low density residential. Our draft future comp plan has it for a little bit higher density. And then again, the zoning is the same with that base zoning of office residential. As you've heard us discuss a few times, the initial proposal had this building at this parcel here, which is an R1 zone parcel. Quite a bit of neighborhood opposition to that. Staff was not fully on board with that as well. So we're very happy to see this move to the main parcel area. This is an existing street view, all green space at this point. Again, so this is Frank here, Thorndale headed this way. So the building. It is about 4 stories tall. Again, some of these stories have varied heights. So the total height request is 52 feet. Looking right up next to the corner here. This, even though it's a separate PUD, we wanted to maintain a lot of the same standards from the initial PUD to make sure that it does look like a developed campus, like one cohesive block. So again, a lot of the building requirements, site requirements are all going to be the same. This, however, is strictly multifamily. So the uses do not have any sort of commercial use, no mixed use, it's only multifamily residential. So that's listed in there. The parcel is only 1.7 acres, which is about 7,200 square feet. So in looking at that in the building design, we wanted to ensure that 5-foot buffer setback that we have from the parking throughout the rest of the site that was going to go along the border along the sidewalk was continued here. So the major difference that we're going to see with what they're proposing and what we're suggesting is to add that 5-foot difference here. So once we get to the building design, you'll see that this is a front patio area. Originally proposed at 1-foot setback here, we're requiring a 5-foot setback. So that way that is a continuous buffer area along Frank Street. But for that, then the building is 20-foot front setback. That is very agreeable with the neighborhood. Most of the properties in the neighborhood do have that 20-foot setback. So that will be very cohesive with the neighborhood that exists. And then for the side and rear setbacks, they have requested between 1 and 6 feet, depending on the yard. We're requesting this be done at 0. This gives them a little bit of flexibility if they do need to adjust the site at all for that 5 foot in the front. It also is just a little bit more realistic and matches the 0 setback that we had along the other PUD site here. So looking at the building itself, again, very sharp, proposed with some good materials. We do have all the high quality materials, again, listed within the PUD. So we're seeing here the 20-foot building setback, the drive in the center that'll go right to the underground parking. We do have noted that no parking is allowed on this. This is only a drive access to underground parking. And then this would be set back a little bit further. So the 5-foot buffer again right here. We have the impervious coverage listed at a maximum of 80%. This is basically a split difference between OR and downtown. OR is listed at 60%, downtown is 100%. We put for 80%. Right now, based on the calculations, they're looking at about 70%. So that gives them a little bit more wiggle room if they wanted to go up to that 80 cap. Again, the building is requested at 52. The other multifamily on the other corner at Thorndale and Ridge that we just discussed just got approved at 53. So similar building heights along both of the corners for the properties. The biggest difference between what's allowed in OR now and what they're proposing is that height difference, which is about another 15 feet. And then the setbacks. OR setbacks vary between 10 and 15 feet, kind of depending on where you are. This one's a little bit different, so it's also on a corner. So the PUD does relax those setback requirements. But since we're still getting 80% impervious coverage and that 20-foot front yard setback, I feel like it will still be really cohesive with that adjoining R1 district. So moving this out of that R1 district and onto the main project site, I think was really beneficial, not only for traffic, but for just the aesthetics of the neighborhood and making sure there isn't that further encroachment into that area without a really solid plan going forward. We did add some conditions here, which we'll get into with the approval, but to make sure that this wouldn't get approved if the other one wasn't going to get approved. You know, this is a very specific standalone project, but since it's part of the campus, we feel like it's really important that both of those things go hand in hand. So that's how we wrote the PUD and that's how we're proposing the PUD with the approvals. So I think that is all that I have for now. They had the same neighborhood meeting as the last application did. Same concerns, really didn't want to see that tall of a building in R1 that was moved. Concerns about the traffic, they did the updated TIA, made adjustments as needed. So with that, I will send it back to you.
Okay. All right, now with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who would like to speak on this item. State your name and address at the podium.
Do you have a list?
My name is Cheryl Wolf, 1203 Liberty Street. I spoke on the previous proposal, and I guess my concerns are the same on this one. The height. It's a residential neighborhood, and, you know, neighborhood's not opposed to development, but it's just disappointing that these properties are going to be proposed so big. So I just wanted to voice my concern on this one as well. Thank you.
I just have one question. I haven't heard anyone address why we need curb cuts on Frank.
And this is a public hearing, so there will not be any.
Yeah, so there's no one addressed that in the previous one, the Corey Venke 1213 Shadow Lane, but definitely an issue.
John Cordry, 1288 Thorndale. Again, I'm directly across the street from this proposed structure. Way too high. And again, you're bringing commercial into what was a residential area. Big concern. Since you already proved the driveway coming out of onto Thorndale, which is a concern, which flashes the lights right at my house. This structure literally blots it out. Like I said, forget about me being selfish about seeing Lambo. We're not going to see daylight for half the year. That's how big the structure is. You know, I am also a part-time developer, and I look at this development as they have totally forgotten about the residents that are here, that are established in the neighborhood. All we're asking is bring the height down. All the variances given to this project, from setbacks to parking to stormwater to height, is unthinkable as far as I'm concerned. And all we're asking for is to plan to consider the existing neighborhood a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellen Merriman, 1183 Thorndale. My question with this, I understand there's underground parking, but those people have guests who come over. Where do they park? There can't possibly be enough street parking that's even remotely close to where they're living, if they're living in those places, for family Christmas for 3 households. There isn't parking within 4 blocks for that many people. So now you have taken up all of the on-street parking and made the congestion even worse.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
Hello, Janet Angus. Hello.
Go ahead and state your name and address for the record, please.
Janet Angus, 1804 Spence Street. I have a law office at 1383 West Mason Street, also in Green Bay. Parking, height, and excessive density are concerns of mine for the property located on Thorndale and Frank. This piece of property was always a residential piece of property. There was never an office on it. It's never been commercial. Facts are, a home was destroyed, gravel yard being created. This was all residential areas. There's only 12 parking spots for 8 units. The code says, I believe, that if there's a 2-bedroom unit, you have to have 2 spots per unit. The size of the units have not been addressed. The parking is going to be a problem. And I'm very, very disappointed in this committee because the short-term rentals in the neighborhood have gotten such a bad rap over parking, and people park on the sidewalks and people don't park properly. And with all the short-term rentals, you're creating an even bigger problem on a day-to-day basis because there's not enough parking for this this project or for the other one? I'd like to know how you're coming up with the parking requirement of only 8 spots for a very, very large building. It's probably in excess of 30,000 square feet. And the total square footage for this unit has not been addressed in anything that I've seen. Also, if there's more than 5 short-term rentals in a building, it's considered to be a hotel. There's eight apartments that are 8 short-term, it's run by a short-term rental company. Are these going to be short-term rentals, all 8 of them? If it is, you need a totally different zoning because it's going to be a hotel. So it should be built in a commercial area. And our commercial area is down over by Holmgren Way. There's a lot of spots over there where you can build a hotel. And there's no green space. Finally, the caricature of Green Bay is of a residential neighborhood with an iconic stadium in the middle of a neighborhood. I think this is becoming a stadium located in the middle of a commercial district. It's disappointing that the uniqueness of Lambeau Field and the surrounding area is being forgotten about and destroyed. It's all about money and tax base, and that's what this has become. And this committee is no green space, there's no parking, it's too high of a density, the height restrictions, it's terrible. Can you imagine living across the street from it's awful. Follow your rules. That's why we have a plan for the community. And this plan, this 2022 plan is not being followed. And again, I feel that this is spot zoning. I'm very disappointed in this committee for not following the 2022 comprehensive plan, for amending it, for following it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I do have Steve Vita. I do have your name on here too.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I asked if you had a list.
I did have it. You were the only person on my
I
list.
know.
So.
Steve Beta with Beer Record, working for Lisco Short Term Rentals. Mike Cobbins is the owner of that. Just a few points that I wanted to make. So access has been talked about. We spent a ton of time and money on access. We had a 2016 study done. We expanded upon that. You saw the results. As Stephanie pointed out in that study, the different traffic calming things that we need to do within the public right of ways and the different turning movements that we need to make within those. They really feel most of the traffic is going to come and go through Ridge Road, so we're pretty comfortable with that traffic pattern. I know these two projects are kind of meshed together, so I wanted to address stormwater a little bit more even. Right now, back in the day when that whole block was built or done, there was, the stormwater management was move the water into the storm sewer system as fast as you can and make sure it gets to the river. That was the stormwater management plan. That's what's going on today still on that site. Even though there's not buildings and downspouts and things like that on that site right now, we have parking, paved parking, we have gravel. There is some grass on the site, but for the most part, gravel and pavement, concrete, they're all considered the same thing, basically 100% runoff. It just goes into the system and it's gone. So one of the good points about this project is, and the way the DNR, the state and the county and the city, the county wouldn't be appropriate, but city and the state look at this is, we have to basically contain our stormwater on site. So yes, we do have under parking lot storage. It addresses both quality and quantity of our stormwater, which is a huge component. The quality of the water gets made much better before it leaves the site, but we are not allowed to let more water leave our site in a precondition as a post condition as far as how fast it can leave our site. So we do store it on site. We treat the quality, but then we release it at a slower rate. Right now, like I said, it's coming out of there to 100%. It just goes into the system. It's gone. So it will address that. The issue that's going on there right now, it'll slow that water way down and be released at a much slower rate into the system, which will allow the rest of the streets to function better as well. So we feel that's kind of a big part of this thing. At one point in time, one of our planners that we had a while ago did a lot of studying on this back in 2016 and found that this was probably one of the most valuable corners in the entire state. So is it going to be low building residential? No, that's not its highest and best use. It was determined even at that time. We knew that just wasn't going to be the case. It's not going to be one or two story residential duplex type structures. That's just not what it's gonna be. When you have that kind of a valuable site in your city. So again, if you have any other questions, I certainly can address them on Mike's behalf. Regarding his building, the picture that Stephanie just put up there, that was that building is shown as a little bit taller than what we're after. It's a 4-story building with the elevator coming up through the top that gets us to the 50 feet. Or 53 feet, but that building has got a couple more stories on it, so it may look a little different than what actually. That's what was proposed originally, but we didn't change the building look, so. Looks the same, it's just a little bit lower than what you saw in there, so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, Tricia Garrison, 1260 Thorndale Street. I also spoke on the last agenda item, so my concerns are the same. Very much in support of the economic development, very much so want Green Bay's tax base to increase. Also a resident here, so I'm in favor of that. Really just asking for there to be a nice transition between any commercial properties and the residential neighborhood. So again, requesting driveways would go out onto Ridge and to Lombardi. And also ask for a green buffer to transition into the neighborhood. They've done this really nicely over in the Titletown district in Ashwaubenon. They've done a beautiful job of a transition between the commercial and the residential. And this is a very valuable corner. We realize that it's really the heart of our city. USA Today, the national media, when they come to our town and they do the flyovers, it's because we have a charming, quaint connection with the residential neighborhood and Lambeau. Obviously, the neighborhood has evolved, will continue to evolve. We need to embrace that. That's great. It can be done thoughtfully, though. And I think Ashwaubenon is a really great example of that. So just really appreciate the opportunity for you hearing our comments tonight and really just ask that you vote thoughtfully. And I would again request a roll call vote since this is a legacy vote. Thank you very much.
I'm going to keep this brief, because I bet you guys are just ready to wrap this up. No, I just want to say a couple of things about the short-term rentals. Our neighborhood has and is a short-term rental neighborhood. It's not residential anymore. I've lived there for 22, almost 23 years now, and it has changed. We have evolved with it. And game day is exciting over there. And I do meet with, you talk about people that are coming into our neighborhoods. I do meet with Travel Wisconsin comes to our house and tailgates. I do meet with mayor of Minneapolis came to one of our games. I meet with all kind of different celebrities and Packer players and that type of thing that come and join us at our tailgate party. Donald Driver was a frequent visitor at our house. Yes, our neighborhood has changed. It's changed for the better. And I can say that a lot of our elderly neighborhood, they have passed on, God bless their souls, and a lot of them have sold their houses and turned them into short-term rentals. Gary spoke from the Green Bay Chamber of Commerce about his house. He's had it for 19 years. It's a short-term rental business for him. All of these houses up and down Shadow Lane are short-term rentals. I think it's fantastic that.
Point of order.
Thank you. I think it's fantastic that you have redesigned everything and you are looking at the concerns and you have addressed them. And Stephanie, you've been absolutely wonderful in explaining everything tonight. Thank you so much, and everyone else. So I thank you, and I hope that we give this building a chance and we do something with this corner, because I think it would be a positive asset for Green Bay. Our tax base, more jobs. I mean, let's quit giving everything to Ashwaubenon. Let's start doing something in Green Bay. Thank you.
You just state your name and address for the
Oh,
record.
Debbie Jocks, 1839 South Oneida Street.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
My name is Eric Pellner, and my wife and I own a duplex, 1802 and 1806 Frank Street. So right across the street from the proposed building. And just kind of echo some of those comments that have been made already tonight. I do think the building height is a little bit high, considering that the building on the corner that we just talked about is going to be at a 53-foot height. It's looking like this building is proposed at a similar height. And I think a little more transition into the residential area of the neighborhood would be appropriate. I also concerned about parking, just like everybody else, with the 8-unit apartment or building. Having 12 parking spots, I think is low for 8 units. And it's a short-term rental. So I look at this as it's a Packard Party House on steroids, right across the street from my rental property. I don't live at 1802 or 1806 Frank Street. I have a duplex, long-term rentals. And I've got 2 retired tenants that live in the duplex. So I'm here on their behalf to prevent such a large building being put right next to our property. And I know development is great. And it's change and it's going to happen. And we welcome change and we welcome development. I understand you're in a tough position because you're trying to raise the tax base for the city, but also be compassionate to the residents that live there. And we've all had an increase in our property taxes this past 2 years, considerable. Our property taxes went up 75%. And there's a lot of people in this neighborhood that are been long-term residents in this neighborhood. And a lot of these people, long-term residents, been here a long time. They're retired, they're on a fixed income. And to have their property taxes go up that much is hard for them. And so they're forced to, in some cases, sell their properties because they can't afford the property taxes anymore. And I understand that having the investment value of the property go up is a good thing, but you're also forcing people out. You're driving people out, and this is just the start of that. And you're going to have this problem continue as more of these properties are inherited or are sold. And those property owners are going to want to turn their properties into something commercial and look at the dollars. And so you're in a tough position to really hear the neighborhood out in making these decisions. So, thank you.
Right, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
Tracy Fleming, 1177 Thorndale Street. She had said that all of that area is pretty much Airbnb, which is not true. There are 10 of us in this room right now that live in that neighborhood, and that's only the ones that could make it. So it's not, you guys are not listening to what we want. I understand money talks, but you're looking at, you got a driveway coming on Thorndale Street. Everybody's gonna go to Bridge, which is bullcrap. They will go all the way down past the school and all of that. I live right across from the school. It's gonna cause more traffic jams down there, 3 o'clock during when the school lets out, or even 8 o'clock in the morning is just nuts. So you're gonna have way more congestion. It's not feasible, even though I realize that you guys want this. It doesn't fit in with the residential.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, that wasn't gonna come up, but. Sarah Drager, 1054 Shadow Lane. First, I would be very proud of Green Bay for doing this. And like I said before, you guys, tell me who's been living in the neighborhood for a long time, as I have.
Please address comments to the
Who,
chair.
sorry, who has truly seen any changes on Lombardi Avenue? There's 2 open lots across from Quick Trip. We own that. It's not gonna be business. This is the only opportunity. What if the Packers would have bought it? What if they got the buyout in it? Let me tell you, they go big. That would have been huge. So yes, there is gonna be change. It is one big lot and it should be something big. It is in the biggest area in the most iconic stadium. What do you expect? I mean, if you're gonna live in that neighborhood, we have to. Of course, you know what we're all gonna say? Yeah, development is good, but not in my neighborhood. That's what I feel. So I'm very proud of Ashwaubenon and what they have done in all their development. I would love to see Green Bay do that too. And Mr. Keene do that for us. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
Mark Van Campenhout. I live at 1195. I was born at 1187.
What street, please?
Thorndale. So I've been in the neighborhood almost 64 years. When I lived there as a kid, there weren't even any houses behind us. It was field. I watched them build the houses, got to know the people. I've lived there my whole life. But I feel like the city of Green Bay is squeezing me out. First, the taxes. I live in an 1,100 square foot house and I'm paying $5,000 worth of taxes. And your guy tells me, well, this is like waterfront property. Well, how come I don't have my pontoon boat tied up out front? That's ridiculous. Those houses all on Thorndale, 1,200 square foot is a big one. And you're taxing the shit out of me. And I don't like it. And you're squeezing us out. You're at the top of the hill, you're gonna just keep coming. Because it said money talks. But what about the people that have been there, grew up there, and want to stay there? You guys are pushing us out. And don't deny it.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 4. Consideration with possible action on a request to establish a planned unit development located at 1835 Ridge Road, submitted by Verbicker on behalf of WISC Short-Term Rentals LLC property owner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to address some of the comments that were made, again, with the height, the base zoning of office residential allows for 35 feet. The CUP will allow you to extend it. So same conversation, 52 feet, we still feel is a comfortable height here, especially with the front yard setback having to be 20 feet for the building that is adjacent to the property that is residential. We feel that's the most appropriate to have the green space located there. I know that this is not part of this PUD request, but I would like to just put this on the record because it was not discussed at the last one. And Mr. Finke brought this up, the curb cuts on Frank. Section 44-1773A of the municipal code allows for driveway cuts on all of the access roads, all the roads that are on a parcel. The only way to pull that back is if it is deemed unsafe to have a curb cut on that location. So DPW and our staff have not deemed that to be unsafe. That's why all 3 were allowed. So just food for thought discussion for the entire site. A lot of talk about this being commercial in nature, or this being a hotel. This is a residential ask. This is an 8-unit residential building, 4 stories tall. So no commercial entity here. If these are rented as short-term rentals, or if they are condoed out and bought by owners, or if they are rented as apartment units, we don't have any control over that. The ownership structure is completely up to the person who owns the property. We have not been given any information about what these units will be, but by land use standards, these are operating as this is operating as a multifamily building with 8 residential units. Again, for the height of the building, casting shadows, the right-of-way width on Thorndale and Frank are both 60 feet, and the curb to curb is 36 feet. So even with a 52-foot tall building, casting a shadow over a 36-foot right-of-way, very minimal impacts there. So we're not so concerned about shadow lines. For the parking, there are 8 units total, and they're proposing 12 underground units. We do have written it's the PUD that only 8 are required. That's based off of 1 parking stall per unit. Just like everybody else that has property, they would utilize street parking if they had visitors. I'm sure that those extra 4 units or 4 parking stalls are probably for the units. I'm not sure that they're proposing the 12 underground. But just like the residential buildings that used to be there, the single family residential buildings, I'm sure they utilize the street parking there as well. So that's what we assume visitors will do. There was a comment that there was no green space on this development. We have the requirement that at least 20% of the parcel be green space based on our impervious surface. This does not qualify for spot zoning. PUDs are not part of the spot zoning legal requirements within state statute. And we've already discussed why this does not match the comprehensive plan. We are in the process of updating our comprehensive plan that should be officially done early summer. And again, draft versions of that are showing that this calls for more density, and especially residential units, there should be a higher number of residential units. The green buffer was added to the front here, again, another 5-foot strip here, and then they're showing the green here. And there was a comment that all drive access should be on Ridge or Lombardi. That would be impossible for this site. The site does not have access to Ridge or Lombardi. So the drive aisle or the drive access on Frank is great, much better than the access on Thorndale. No issues with the drive here. Again, with the short-term rentals, we can't confirm ownership, nor can that be part of the PUD. So we don't have any issue with that. And I think that staff as a whole disagrees that this would be pushing neighbors out. We tried as much as we could to be sensitive to the neighbors, existing owners, future owners, people who used to live there. It doesn't matter if they are short-term renters that are only there for the weekend, if they are full-time occupants. This offers a lot of grace. The entire campus does to, get some more green space in there to take care of that stormwater management plan to make sure the flooding is decreased for the area. This gives us some more residential units without being overwhelming to the neighborhood. It's only 32 additional residential units. So overall, we are recommending approval of the PUD, requiring that a land division to create the new parcel is done as part of the PUD. And then again, if the associated 2440 PUD was not approved, that this would not be approved either.
And then you said, we're talking about as far as the short-term rentals, you have no control over whether they're used that way, but the city has things in place. There's permitting that they need to go through.
Lots of permitting.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
So short-term rentals are really regulated by the state of Wisconsin. They removed the local municipalities' authority to regulate them. So if it's a allowed living unit, it can be a short-term rental. So I think we received some comments saying, well, no, that's a hotel. It may function similarly to a hotel, but it is by state definition a short-term rental, and it's allowed to do that.
We as a municipality don't have any control over that, unfortunately.
Right.
So talk to your state officials.
Okay. No, I have a hard time with this because I do want to be sensitive to the people that have been there. The gentleman that caught up and spoke and said, you remember when his backyard was field, he remembers those houses being built, and I can really appreciate that. And what I think we need to also appreciate is that this isn't always, it has been always evolving, and it's a vibrant area because of that stadium. And I don't think that, putting something just one block off of the stadium is changing the neighborhood. It's still in a neighborhood. If you go, I've been to Soldier Field, that's right on the waterfront in the middle of nowhere. And when the Silver Dome was there, that was also in the middle of nowhere. And I've been there too. Like this Green Bay, even with these buildings, with the way Titletown is built up, it is still nothing like any other stadium that I've seen. I certainly can appreciate the neighbors, and these are big buildings coming up, but personally, I think it's exciting. I think it's vibrant. This was already zoned as office residential, so this was going to be something other than just R1. So I certainly appreciate the neighbors being, concerned about it. But I think that, this is the evolution of this area. Lambeau has evolved. I remember, because I've been here my whole life, when that little airport was where Tundra Lodge was. It was like a weird grassland with weird metal structures. Like that whole area has just changed so much. And so I can appreciate the neighbors that have been there, but this is just kind of how that neighborhood has evolved.
I really appreciate everybody who's here tonight. I don't want you to leave here feeling like we didn't hear you. We are listening.
You might not like how we decide, but that doesn't mean we didn't hear your concerns and didn't take them into consideration. And I look at this as kind of, like you said, like an evolution of this neighborhood. Not trying to destroy the character of what is there, but like we've been discussing, this is existing in office residential zoning. And density is just what's planned for there in the next phase, so. Appreciate the changes there.
So a motion to approve, with the recommendations made by staff, for land division and the associated POD that approved for this.
Second. So is that with all the changes that
I don't think there was.
there weren't any on this one, it was just on the last one, okay. Any further discussion?
Sure. Brian Johnson, President of the Common Council. One of the things that Stephanie did a really great job, I think, of addressing some of the things that were brought up. I think the one thing, though, that's probably just more political and probably why Stephanie avoided it, and wisely so, is around property taxes. And I just think it's important to be informational on that point. And so this type of development, which is, really classified as commercial development, would not impact the residential property taxes because they're though, this type of development is not used as a comp when looking at residential. Now, to be fair, what does affect that is the property sales and other residential properties in that neighborhood, which clearly have gone up, right? Because of they're being converted to short-term rentals or other uses. So, but that is really like the revaluation that's conducted. That's really driven by the state. And I think it's a very unfair law because it's essentially penalizing you almost like a capital gains tax before you realized the gain. And so I want to share that because the city, while we have the responsibility to do what the state has directed us to do, we don't actually make that decision to determine what that tax rate is. And so I would be happy to go arm in arm with anybody. I know other alders would too, where we've seen residents in homes for 50 years on fixed incomes get this huge increase and we have no ability, to influence that. And so I would more than welcome an opportunity to engage in a dialogue with our state representatives about ways to adjust that. So I at least wanted to provide some clarity around that point. It doesn't necessarily affect the request in front of you, but clearly it's a concern. And I think I just wanted to be informational about it. So thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion by Vice Chair Miller and a second by Commissioner Levinsky.
Let's do a roll call.
Okay, all right. Vice Chair Miller,
Aye.
Alder Jim Hutchinson,
Aye.
Commissioner Levinsky,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Fullwilder, aye. And Chair Hansen, aye. And then that will go forward then to City Council for January 21st.
Request for a short.
5 minutes.
I'll let the room fill out.
Okay.
Second committee is that.
All right, motion by Vice Chair Miller, second by Chair Levinsky. All those in favor?
Aye.
5 minutes. Are we back in session? All right, on to item number 5, which is a public hearing. And this public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, and whether you favor, oppose, or are providing information. We ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will now open the public hearing on item number 5. Public hearing on a request to amend the Smart Growth 2022 Comprehensive Plan for 500 Day Street from future industrial land use to downtown land use, submitted by Community and Economic Development.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. So as you had said, this is a request to look at the future land use within our Smart Growth 2022 comp plan. So the property itself is approximately a 44-acre parcel on the very near east side. So it's located sort of at the confluence of the Fox River and the East River. I think everybody probably knows where the Georgia Pacific site is. Quincy Street is on the east, and there's railroad track across the north, an active railroad track. So the site itself has about 1,900 feet of frontage, roadway frontage, but about a half a mile of frontage, so about 2,400 feet of frontage on the river. And then again, as I mentioned, you have the railroad line, active railroad line, which kind of shows where Eastman would go, crosses the river. Not super active, but active. The 2022 Smart Growth Plan does recommend this area for industrial uses. And I guess you can see it there in gray. Again, the comp plan was drafted in 2002, 2001. At that time, there was very active users there. You'll notice to the east of Quincy, there is more industrial and then light industrial. This to also support land use for the industrial complex along Quincy. So I don't know if everybody's aware of sort of the history of Georgia Pacific Mill. It's had a lot of different operating names, but it was established in 1901. So you have over 120 years of active mill work here. Probably many people in this room have relatives or they themselves may have worked at the mill. So it's been an important part of Green Bay. It is kind of gave us the nickname toilet paper capital of the world, which some people don't like, some people love. I'm proud of that. But in March of 2022, Georgia Pacific did announce that they would be closing this mill site for a variety of reasons. But one not to overshadow, I guess, is a $500 million investment in the West Side Mill. So, don't want to distract from Georgia Pacific at all. But this followed real closely with basically the closure, the decommission of the 15-acre WPS site just to the south of here. And maybe I'll kind of jump on this a little bit more. So the future land use, you can see that's industrial. To the south across the East River is downtown. It's the purple. And if you want to zoom to the zoning, and the zoning kind of matches that. You have D2 or downtown 2 to the south. And to the north, you have general industrial. To the east, you have some general industrial that goes into a multifamily and then continues to go east and drop density. To the west is the Fox River, obviously. And if you can go back to the aerial, I guess. Probably one's a little bit closer in and the other one is out. But the WPS site to the south was decommissioned in 2020. So just 2 years before Georgia Pacific announced their closure. And so the city at that time saw the WPS site as a great opportunity site, already designated downtown, nice open area and a good opportunity. So 2 years later, when the Georgia Pacific site popped up, we were thinking even better. We have more river frontage, ability to kind of expand the downtown. Well, we haven't really seen any plans at this time. So we really, at this point, the Department of Community and Economic Development and the Planning Division made the request to do this comp plan change, and there is an affiliated zone change that would be coming up next on the agenda for the site. And we really see some pretty big advantages, and I'll be really kind of rough with them or broad with them. One is to be able to connect the north and south side of the East River. So that would be connecting downtown. East River is not a huge traveled, definitely not a commercially traveled riverway. So the ability to put pedestrian bridges over. You can see on this map just to the east off of University is Green Bay Metro Transit Center. That is less than 500 feet away from this site. Transit is extremely important in that as we evolve more and more as a city, you're probably going to get less dependency on the automobile, which kind of governs Green Bay right now, but get a lot more transit use and multimodal use. So that proximity is pretty important to any employees or residents. We can improve the aesthetics of the property. This has been stated in our comp plan and just in discussions that this is a gateway to our downtown, mainly through University Avenue, but also as you go down Webster or Quincy, but mainly Webster. That is the gateway from Highway 43 into our downtown area. We also have Velp and some other gateway entrances. But cleaning up the aesthetics of this would be incredibly beneficial to the city. The land use options in a downtown district are drastically larger than what would be allowed in a general industrial district. So that is important too. There's the ability to speed and redevelopment when you have more options and multiple different options. It allows that to be marketed much differently. Improve tax base, which you kind of heard discussed just before with the last project. The industrial uses tax base is much lower than a downtown tax base. I can give you some examples of that, but in some cases, tenfold value difference. There are reasons for that at the state level, but that's one. Higher and better uses of the site and potential waterfront improvements, including access to the public. That is always a big thing with our riverfronts or our bayfront. A lot of times you get people coming in wanting roadways to be closed off that go to the waterways. The state does not even allow that. Access to waterfront is very important to the state, very important to the city and our quality of life. And then just the permitted uses in a downtown zoning are much more compatible with the uses to the east, the south, and the river uses itself than an industrial user would be. Again, 100+ years ago, most of the waterways in the city and most industrial cities were very industrial, and ours was no different. And you know, in our lifetimes, you can see over time how that is slowly transitioning, sometimes fast in certain areas, other times slow. I mean, you have the shipyard, the rail yard. Rail yard's not necessarily waterfront, but then everything here on the east side. So that opportunity would also put itself here. I do want to point out that one thing, because of that active rail line on the north, staff had a lot of discussion, contemplated a light industrial use up there may be suitable. Unfortunately, it's all one parcel right now. We can't really divide that separate. But if somebody were to come forward with a light industrial use along the tracks and utilizing the tracks, staff would probably feel that would be appropriate. And at that time, we could change the use when a project comes forward. Stephanie had mentioned this in her last presentation that our comp plan is currently probably 2/3 completed. It's being drafted right now. We've gone through about a year of input. That area directly to the east, which is a neighborhood right now primarily. There are a few other users there. There's an auto repair. There is some industrial storage lots, you know, that I believe are owned by Georgia Pacific as well. Some of them. That area was always designated for industrial, so those homes in there were always legal non-conforming. There was also a lot of floodplain issues there. FEMA has updated their maps. Almost all those homes are out of the floodplain. With this change, we would really have loved to look all the way to Webster with future land uses, but that would have been 300, 400, 500 letters going out, 500 different properties to coordinate with. When we know in probably May, we'll be coming forward with a new land use map and address it at that point. But I did want to point that out, that we would have looked at that if time wasn't of the essence for us. Part of our fear is that general industrial land use and the zoning that goes along with it allows a lot of uses, a lot of hard uses, concrete crushing, water houses, outdoor storage, full storage. So you can just imagine kind of the fear with this being for sale and us not knowing what's going to happen. So we have notified, we've notified the alder prophet for the area, also an adjacent alder person Johnson, the old north neighborhood, the downtown neighborhood, and we actually went out about 500 feet on this one, just because the roadways are really wide. As of this time, we've only gotten inquiries for what's happening. Not really any objections or approval. I'll leave it for the recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from, or no, we're on the actual item. I crossed it off too early, sorry about that. Okay, I do have someone on my list for this item. Chris Brennan.
I think I might actually be the number 7.
Oh, it says 6 through 8, so
Yeah,
I
I
was
apologize.
I was starting early, I guess.
That's all right.
Okay, then don't worry about it. Okay, so I guess I don't have anyone on the list then. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item?
Actually, I think you do want to speak on this.
Not the next one.
Well, this is the future
all
land
together.
use.
Well, that's
and
why it's kind of-
Next one would be the zoning.
Okay.
So either or both.
Happy to go if that's all right.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. So good evening, everybody. My name's Chris Brennan. I'm the Public Affairs Manager for Georgia Pacific's Green Bay operations. So just wanted to come tonight and share a few thoughts that we had. So while I am based here in Green Bay, Wisconsin, our real estate team is based in Atlanta, Georgia. They received the city's letter dated December 27th, 2024 on January 9th, 2025. So given the short time frame, we received the letter, and given tonight's meeting, Georgia Pacific and Colliers, who is marketing and helping manage all inquiries from potential buyers, are working toward gathering the information about potential buyers to eventually share with the city. Since the start of Colliers' marketing efforts in fall of 2024, there's been significant interest from local, regional, and national investors, developers, and end users. The site has been toured by 10 to 12 different prospects, and several of these prospects have toured on 2 and 3 occasions. In fact, this afternoon I was informed that Georgia Pacific and Colliers are days away from receiving multiple letters of intent and offers related to the property. So Georgia Pacific's ask of the Plan Commission this evening is to please hold or defer this action for 30 to 60 days. During this time, Georgia Pacific and Colliers is prepared to meet with the city's economic development group, the mayor, local aldermen, to share information and have a collaborative conversation about the future use of this property. Our objective is to ensure that any future use is physically and financially feasible and mutually beneficial to the community, Georgia Pacific, and the potential buyer. Also, we would like to ensure that the positive and productive relationship that Georgia Pacific has had with the city over the past few decades continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone else wishing to?
Excuse me,
Name
Bill
and address.
Langhoff here.
If you could just state your name and address for the record, please.
Bill Langhoff with Colliers International, 426 Apple Tree Road, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I represent Georgia Pacific in the disposition of this asset. And I just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Brennan had said. Our activity on this property has been exceptional considering the size and the scope of this project and this undertaking. Chris highlighted that we have spoken to national, regional, and local developers and investors regarding this site. And it's important to understand that any transaction on a site like this will take months to execute. Transactions of this size and scope do not occur overnight. And it's appropriate. I think Chris's request is very appropriate based on the length of time that a transaction will take. A general commentary, this process seems to be a bit rushed and not quite sure where the sense of urgency is all of a sudden, particularly, based on the complexity, again, the complexity and the size of this site. Now, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 6. Consideration with possible action on a request to amend the Smart Growth 2022 Comprehensive Plan for 500 Day Street from future industrial land use to downtown land use submitted by Community and Economic Development.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. So, you kind of gone through the 4 points. Staff is recommending amending the comprehensive plan future land use from general industrial to downtown at this time. You want a presentation? again?
No, that's fine.
There we go.
I very much appreciate us wanting to get this to downtown from general industrial, but I am concerned that the property owner only received the letter 5 days ago.
That is somewhat unfortunate, that is unfortunate that it had to go through corporate, so it took time to filter through. The one thing I would like to point out that even though it goes to the plan commission tonight for your recommendation to the council, that would go to the January 1st council for a first reading. And then because of the comprehensive plan amendment, there is a time gap there. So it would not go back again to council for the second reading until March 4th. So there is still several months basically, that it would still be going through the process. It would just be at the council level rather than planning commission. So I would throw that out there. But to your point.
I still
And
appreciate that. I
think
still definitely want it downtown,
Yeah.
but also like, there's a property owner.
There is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, David, if you could just clarify, you said January 1st meeting.
23rd, I think you meant.
Yeah.
January 21st.
He said first, but he meant,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, and I just want to clarify, so the recommendation of this body would come to the council meeting for the comprehensive plan modification, which council would take up. But you still have on here, right, the rezone,
Correct.
and that would require 2 readings.
They would both require 2 readings. So they would go to the first one on January 21st. We would actually hold the rezone one to match the comp plan.
And it just takes the comp plan.
You have a 30-day
longer?
gap between the 2 council.
Okay, whereas the rezone doesn't have the gap, but you would intentionally hold it.
We would hold it so they line up together, so they would go together.
Okay.
What was the date? March what? March 4th. Okay. So again, still not a lot of time. However, at any of those levels, it could be held, it could be tabled. Right now, we have not seen anything. We haven't heard of anything. And again, some of the general industrial uses are very intense.
So I guess I am just curious what triggered this.
We've been talking about it probably for about 2 years.
Okay.
At staff level. We had hoped to bring it forward as part of the comp plan.
Right.
However, that's taking a little bit longer than we had first anticipated.
Did the property just go up for sale? Is that?
No, I believe it's been for sale for at least a year.
Right.
Maybe a year.
No, excuse me, the property has been for sale, officially for sale since early October.
Oh, no, not even.
I'm
2024.
I'm just concerned that I don't know. Kind of leave the cart before
Yeah, you can hold it if you prefer.
Just for additional clarification, I mean, if you don't take action on this today and the property sells, right, to a new buyer, I mean, in theory, it's going to be maintained as continued industrial use, right? It'd be a lot harder at that point. But if you convert it to downtown zoning, one of the things is that you could have a conditional use within that, you know, where that can be negotiated back in. So to the point from Mr. Brennan, right, that we'd want to continue those conversations. I think that's imperative either way, right? But I just wanted to verify with staff that conditional use would be a contingency of the downtown zoning. And then my assumption, would it be correct, right, that if the property sells to an industrial user, that it would kind of continue as is if this body doesn't take action prior to that. So are both those assumptions accurate, or is it somewhere in between?
Kind of in between. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by the conditional use. Is talking about the northern portion that we discussed, or?
Well, there's what's in the report, right? But I mean, in theory, with downtown zoning, allow industrial uses subject to a conditional use permit, or only as this body would sort of segregate it.
They would not. At that point, if it had a heavy industrial use, they would have to go back. You'd have to rezone it again.
Okay.
If it was light industrial, then there's other options. I don't think we have any type of heavy industrial except for general industrial zoning in the city. There would be no conditional use in a downtown for industrial use. They're not permitted at all. They're prohibited.
Okay, but the way you're proposing it right now is that you would allow for that conditional use of light industrial within certain sections of this parcel.
Yeah, what we had done is we made sure we put in the staff report and the communication from the plan commission, from staff to the plan commission to council, that we would support that. So it's on the record, it's known, that you're going forward with the rezone with the understanding that if a project comes forward, that you have staff supporting that. So, without knowing how much area is needed or having property lines, we really can't do that at this time.
So not necessarily a CUP, but if a land division
Correct.
were to take a portion of that land, that we would be supportive of that going to a light industrial use.
So you would then rezone it at that time.
Correct.
Okay. And for what it's worth, like, you know, I've had conversations with, you know, staff in the mayor's office around this for a while now, but I'm not gonna necessarily share an opinion today. I'll let you guys decide that piece. Council will have its crack at this, but I just wanted to ask those questions so everybody clearly understood kind of what was happening.
I don't want to hold it.
Right.
I think we need to get this to council because they can move a bit quicker than we can. Just due to the meeting cadence on it. I'm less scared of buyer getting off the hook at this juncture than I am of losing control of getting this into a downtown zoning. I much prefer that. The rest of it can be worked out between council and them if something does come to a head quickly. But we cannot hold it up here because that just delays things even further down the line, in my opinion.
Right, so I guess if we move forward on this today, in the effort, you know, to get that March 4th date, there's still gonna be an opportunity for the property owner and the city to have conversations around all of this, right?
Okay.
Like, we're not cutting them off, like, I mean, the property owner is still the property owner at this point, like, I don't want to be taking anything away from them, but also I really want that downtown.
Well, I mean, we technically are taking a certain subset of allowed building uses away from them if this were to go through.
But you're adding many more.
But we're adding many more to, I'm guessing they have people, they've got people they're talking to, they don't want to just, you know, uncertainty is always what's gonna undo a business deal. This is actually giving more possibilities. I hope that rings through to the property owners, but I will move to approve on this. I think we gotta get it to council's hands out of the way. I think if something changes, they can overrule us and change it if they need to, but we don't want to hold it up here.
Well, I have a concern where we're trying to fit this property into our desires, regardless of what the owner thinks and is negotiating. I'd rather see the city discussing this with the owner when they have firm quotes as to what they envision and their buyer envision being there versus trying to fit what we want. I want it downtown, but at the same time, they own it. They're good investors of this city. I don't wanna see them disappointed in our actions, especially on the riverfront. I think we could work together to make this what we wanted and not a coal pile. Okay, so I'm a little bit concerned that we're doing this so fast. I know why, but even though we may get what we want, are we doing it at the risk of ruining a relationship? I'm concerned a little bit about that.
Excuse me, may I speak?
The floor is not open at this time.
Okay.
We could open it up. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind hearing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Move to open.
Second. A motion by Alder Hutchinson, second by Commissioner Fullwilder. All those in favor?
Aye.
I don't. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It is absolutely Georgia Pacific's full intent to cooperate and collaborate with the city with respect to the new owners. And our intent is to make these introductions. We have had, as I said before, we have had very strong activity. And as Chris said a few minutes ago, we are on the verge of receiving both letters of intent
and or offers to purchase for the property. And we'll obviously make those introductions to the city, to your boards and groups when the time is right. So to be clear, it is absolutely Georgia Pacific's full intent to cooperate and collaborate with the city on the future of that site. And so when you brought it up, I just wanted to reiterate that. So thank you.
I have a question. This is Cheryl.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
You know, I'm wondering, and let me just state that we are totally on board with working with GP on a new owner for that site. We've had some discussions already with them, so very supportive of their project. I guess my question would be maybe to Chris or to Bill, are the offers that you're tendering now, would they fit into a different zoning plan, a downtown plan, or are you also entertaining just straight industrial uses for that site?
I can't speak to all of the prospective people that we've talked to. But I can tell you that some of the groups that we are talking to, that I believe we will receive written either letters of intent or offers from, have intentions of, I'll say, softening that site. I'm not going to go into specifics because candidly, I don't know, but I know that there is some intent of softening the site, demolition of some of the buildings, and probably leaving some industrial nearest the railroad tracks to the, I believe that's the north.
Okay.
You know, I think our request is simply an additional 30 days, I think would be appropriate in this case. You know, we just spent 2 hours on a small 2.7 acre site with a 42,000 square foot development, and the terms thoughtful and careful were used several times. I think thoughtful and careful are warranted on a site that's almost 50 acres and 700,000 square feet. As I've described this, in my opinion, this is the largest infill redevelopment site in the city of Green Bay. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty certain that it is. And I just think that it warrants an additional 30 days of consideration from Plan Commission. And I think we can make a lot of inroads and a lot of progress in the next 30 days with your body.
I would agree totally. This is a huge project for the city. And you think about, you know, it was mentioned before, legacy projects, right? When you've got a business that's been there over 100 years, and then this change takes place, it's really important, I think.
And right? A phenomenal corporate citizen.
Right. You know, I guess in our opinion, you know, to delay this 30 days, I mean, I think as planning staff, we talked about that. And you know, we would be okay with that, knowing that that we'll have this conversation with them with regards to the uses for that site. But that decision is really up to Plan Commission and Council on how aggressive you'd like to be moving forward with the zoning.
Motion to close the floor. Second.
Motion by Vice Chair Miller, second by Commissioner Vinsky to close the floor. All those in favor?
Aye. 30-day hold would put it on, it's actually longer than that. Our next meeting after January 27th would be February 24th. More than 30 days.
And then, yeah, February 24th, and then would it still be March 4th then, so the 3rd or the 2nd? I guess.
No, it would be pushed back. I would have to figure out the timing, but probably more like mid-April. Final approval.
Yeah, we lose a meeting because of the February election, so there's only one couple meetings.
I have a hard time because I do want to be aggressive with this, but for them, I'm only having 5 days notice. I have a hard time with that. And I understand that it was, you know, the procedural and that's just it, but
I think we can call a spade here. There's obviously industrial uses that are of interest. They would not be resisting this if there was not parties interested in using it for industrial development. I just reading between the lines, that's why they would they'd be asking for this delay. From a planning perspective, this should be downtown. That is what I will vote in favor of. The political aspect of a big spender doing something, that is for council to figure out. That is not a planning zoning decision. So I am voting from that perspective and let the political aspects play themselves out as they will. So I will move to approve.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I have a hard time with that too, because somebody talked about, you know, this long relationship that we've had with this company. And I certainly can appreciate having a good relationship. This is also the future land use of Green Bay. I mean, it's been industrial for 100 years and we now have the chance to make it something different. I'm not happy that they only have 5 days notice, but yeah, I'm concerned that it's just gonna be in another industrial site and we won't have.
I have shades of Walmart on Broadway is what.
That's why I'm on this body in the first place, is because of Walmart, so.
I didn't get a second, so.
I was just letting people talk.
Yeah,
But no, I will second it, because I think that is what we're here to do, is to think of the plan for Green Bay. And not the relationships of Green Bay. We're the planning commission,
Land use.
land use.
And if something comes to light in the next 30 days, as is indicated, council can reverse this. I'm just trying to get it in their hands so they can make a nimble decision, whatever may be. I just don't want to hold it up. I don't think from a planning perspective to hold it here. That's it.
Correct. Because in 30 days, would we have a different recommendation than today?
If there's a plan that brings a ton of jobs to Green Bay and it's an industrial use, then it's a different conversation. But we don't have that information right now. All we have is.
But that's a conversation the city will have with the owner as well. So I mean, it's not like we're pushing this on and it's a done deal.
It's not stamped today.
Right, no, we're just letting it move forward.
Correct.
All right, so we have a motion by Vice Chair Miller, a second by Commissioner Rubinstein. Do we have any further discussion? All right, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, so we have 6-4, 1 against, and then that will, the first reading of that will be January 21st.
That's fine.
Oh, sorry. Oh, right, because we're short one.
Fine.
My bad. All right. So now moving on to item number 7, which is a public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda item. And we invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, and whether you favor, oppose, or providing information. We ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand, avoid repetitive testimony, and city staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. Unless you recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. We'll now open the public hearing on item number 7. Public hearing on a request to rezone 500 Day Street from GI General Industrial District to D2 Downtown 2 District, submitted by Community and Economic Development.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. This is very similar to the last presentation, same location, same site, rather than the future land use plan, which is in our comp plan, which is what we generally base our zoning off of. This would be the actual zone change. So the zone change would change this from a general industrial zoning to a downtown 2 zoning to match what's across the East River to the south. Again, with that safe caveat, if a plan came forward, we're pre-stating that we would be interested in looking at some type of industrial along the tracks. But without having that.
All right, now with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who would like to speak on this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 8. Consideration with possible action on a request to rezone 500 Day Street from GI General Industrial District to D2 Downtown 2 District, submitted by Community and Economic Development.
Thank you. Yes, so we are recommending approval for zone change from general industrial to downtown.
I'll make it quick, move to approve.
Second.
So this is the same situation. We're not moving it on any faster. We're just kind of letting it go but this isn't stamped today. There's still discussions.
Correct, yeah, the council can hold it on their own. They could remand it back to the plan commission. They could take action on it. Again, we recommend to you if you recommend it to them.
Right. Yeah. Okay,
They can recommend it back.
they can.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a motion by Vice Chair Miller and a second by Commissioner Ravinsky. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
We've got 5-4, 1 against. And moving on to City Council for January 21st. Moving on to item number 9, which is a public hearing, and the public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items, and we invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or only providing information, and your comments or concerns. We ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable items. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we'll now open the public hearing on item number 9. Public hearing on a request for a conditional use permit to allow a single-family home use within the OR Office Residential District at 158 North Maple Street, submitted by David Erickson of NeighborWorks Green Bay, applicant, City of Green Bay Redevelopment Authority property owner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this item might look a little familiar. Similar request was brought before the Planning Commission back in July. At that time, there was a different potential buyer for the property, but that person withdrew their request before it got to council. So the rezoning, or excuse me, this conditional use permit never actually happened. So we're back at it today, a similar request. So 158 North Maple Street. Currently it's a vacant parcel right now. There was a home there. The home has been removed. If you want to go to the next slide. So this is the future land use. What's unique about this parcel is that the future land use is for medium and high density. But with this being a conditional use permit for a single family, it might seem a little unusual. It's a really small parcel. You're not gonna get a huge amount of units on there. And at one time, there was plans for UWGB to have a home on that parcel for some students that were gonna be doing some work in the downtown. But with the density that you find in the medium to high density district, you're still obtaining those numbers just because those parcels are so small. You're still getting the density that you'd want to see there at between 8 to 10 units per acre. Then for the zoning, basically everything around it is zoned office residential. And in the office residential, a single family Homes is conditional use. So there's currently a request has been submitted to the redevelopment authority of Green Bay. They're the owners of the parcel by NeighborWorks for a single family home. This conditional use permit also includes a covered front porch that we'd like to include in the conditional use permit. When it extends into the front yard setback, they are required to get that conditional use permit. The front yard setback in this neighborhood is 21 feet. They're gonna be extending a covered front porch that goes 6 feet into that. So they need to get the conditional use permit for this. It's going to be a 2-story home, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bath, with a detached 1-car garage. Based on the site plan, they would need a variance to the rear yard setback. This rear yard setback is 25 feet. It's a corner side. It's a corner lot, which makes the rear yard kind of unusual, but the rear yard setback would be 25 feet. They're proposed at 20.3, but just something to note, nothing that this body has to deal with, but just a reminder to the applicant that they will have to go to the Board of Appeals if that stays with their site plan. So there are 7 conditions that need to be met when you look at a conditional use permit. And I'll get into that once we get to the action item of the agenda.
All right. And with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who would like to speak on this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Did I said it before,
Just two, no.
I said it the first time too.
Oh, you did.
Yeah. Let the record reflect that this public hearing, that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 10. Consideration with possible action on a request for a conditional use permit to allow a single family home use within the OR Office Residential District at 158 North Maple Street. Submitted by David Erickson of NeighborWorks Green Bay applicant, City of Green Bay Redevelopment Authority property owner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When we look at the criteria for conditional use permits, the criteria all appear to meet the standards. The neighborhood, as far as the covered front porch, it kind of maybe look odd without one, to be honest. It blends into the neighborhood. That's what all the homes around it do have. And then as far as single family homes, the properties around it are mainly single family residences right now. There is multifamily residence to the east of the property. So we did contact the Alder, the Fort Howard Neighborhood Association, and property owners within 200 feet. I've received no inquiries at all about the request. Our recommendation is to approve, but we do have 3 conditions on the conditional use permit. And that is a development agreement shall be approved by the City of Green Bay Redevelopment Authority. This has not gone to them yet for their approval. So we just want to make sure that they're obviously willing to work with, work with the applicant. And then they also have to go through our site plan review approval process and compliance with the Green Bay Municipal Code, which kind of gets back to that comments for the rear yard setback, maybe not variance. Recommendations for.
I just want to say for the record, I do live across the street from this property.
Oh, right.
As we know from.
You got my letter?
I did get
He's got
the
a covered
letter.
porch.
He's got a covered. I do have a covered porch.
He's got a covered porch.
Yeah. It would be unfitting to not have covered front porch. I'm gonna make a motion to approve.
I'm just blown away that that house is torn down because I drive down Maple all the time and how did I not notice it?
It was a tough decision. We didn't want to fall apart, obviously.
No, I mean, well, it was like it was like a six family. I mean, it was like apartments. It was one house that was, and the house across the street, 3-story, that was also the same. It had like 8 apartments in it.
3,600 square feet.
It had experienced some rough times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what, but I just can't,
And
now I need to drive down there on my way home now.
I can also say, I watched as they did the demo, they did pull out historic elements.
Oh, they
from it.
did?
Yeah.
Oh.
So there was stuff salvaged from the property, because I was sad to see it go too, but now I'm ready to see the new,
That's a nice small house.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
new neighbors.
All right, so we have a motion,
Second.
second. Any further discussion? A motion by Commissioner Vinsky, second by Vice Chair Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll move forward to city council. Moving on to number 11, to the public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The planning commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, and whether you favor, oppose, or provide information. We ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actual item. You must be recognized by the planning commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. I'll now open the public hearing on item number 11, public hearing on the request for a conditional use permit to allow a multiple message sign at 1902 North Irwin Avenue, submitted by Trevor Bowman of Lamar Central Outdoor LLC, applicant and easement holder, Manuel Bustamante Razo, property owner.
Thank you, Chair. So the property looking at here is at North Irwin and Radisson up along I-43. Vacant lot that's on commercial that has had a billboard on it here for many years. Some folks who were here back in 2022 may recall there was a CUP request to have a multiple message operation or a digital billboard on the east side of this billboard back then. Anytime there's a digital billboard, it comes in front of this committee for a CUP. So at this time, they're looking to change the 2 existing static billboards on the west of the property and change it over to a digital billboard. When we look at that, we review to see what the context is with in relation back to the neighborhood, to the zone commercial district. There are no residential districts that are nearby to this individual billboard. So the next factor in that is looking over to what it looks like actually on the ground at the site. And so the sizing of a billboard that would go in is based on how close you are to the nearest oncoming traffic at the intersection, the nearest intersection, this being the eastbound traffic of Radisson. That intersection is approximately 225 feet or so from the billboard itself. And with that, the max size of a billboard can be 650 square feet. Initially, the applicant asked for 672 to match the billboard on the opposite side. They had to lose 2 square feet then to meet the code, and they were okay with that. So they would reduce their electronic sign from down to 14 by 46. Additionally, then staff reviews what this means in reference back to section 30-63, which is multiple message sign operation standards. This goes into play as far as just how much wattage and things of that sort that is put out as far as lumens and spillover and how does it work with DPW. So DPW gives a look at it. DPW in their initial review was okay with this idea. Additionally, if you are to put up a multiple message sign, you must do a mitigation of existing billboard inventory in the city. So Lamar had taken down a nearby billboard over here on Monroe that's within the central business district. If you do that, you get 5 points, mitigation points for doing that. That can then take it and be applied to a digital billboard, which is what they have done. So that's the background. You can note in one of the attached documents, the boilerplate from 30-63 that discusses hazard abatement, things of that sort, just general discussion on the matter, and I'll get into the CUP standards when it comes to the action item.
All right, excellent. So now this is a public hearing. We're looking to hear from anyone who would like to speak on this item. Is there anyone looking to speak? Is there anyone looking to speak on this? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 12, consideration with possible action on the request for a conditional use permit to allow a multiple message sign at 1902 North Irwin Avenue submitted by Trevor Bowman of Lamar Central Outdoor LLC applicant and easement holder Manuel Bustamante Rosso property owner.
Sure. So based on the 7 standards for a CUP, noting that there is the boilerplate language for electronic messaging billboards and the reduction of the billboard going to go down to less than 650 square feet, staff felt satisfied with meeting the conditions for a CUP. There were notifications sent out to Older Presley and adjacent property owners within 200 feet, and we received no any questions or comments on this. So staff does recommend approval based off of 5 points. This is boilerplate type stuff. You happen to have seen that this pretty similar to what was done back in 2022 for this. A site plan and applicable permit applications are submitted to the Department of Community and Economic Development for review and approval. Said plan shall include a panel which does not exceed 650 square feet in size. The sign per application shall not be valid unless approved by the Director of Public Works or the designee. The Department of Public Works shall be provided with the means to turn off a digital billboard in the case of hazardous glare, interference with the visibility or effectiveness of a traffic signal or control or other hazard caused by the sign. The owner shall maintain up-to-date contact info with DPW. The contact information is provided 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, with access to a person or persons that is or are available at all times to respond to hazardous sign situations. And then the proposed signage shall meet all requirements of Article 3 off-premise advertising within the code.
Motion to approve is recommended.
Second. Got a motion by Commissioner Rivitsky, second by Commissioner Holwilder. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, and City Council for January 21st. Moving on to item number 13, which is a public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted. Public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Planning Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you're a president of River Association, whether you favor, oppose, or open for providing information in this matter. And we also ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Planning Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. I'll now open the public hearing on item number 13. Public hearing on a request to rezone 501 South Washington Street from Public Institutional District to Downtown 1 District, submitted by Community and Economic Development.
Thank you, Chair. So everybody, I hope, is familiar with this site. So we're looking at fire station number 1 is probably what everybody's knows what 501 South Washington is. The property is, well, I guess the next slide is land use. So future land use is downtown. Wow, great. Okay. Zoning. Wow, the shocker. Then when it comes to the zoning, this is where things get a little interesting, right? It's a fire station. It's owned by the city. So it falls within our public institutional zoning district. Everything around it is zoned downtown 1. So we're trying to keep it consistent with this proposal. The fire station is no longer using the building. So the city will eventually be selling the site. So to make it, our code actually says that if any land zoned public institutional is sold, conveyed, or transferred to any non-governmental entity, the buyer or transferee must submit an application requesting the city to rezone the land. So, the property is still owned by the city of Green Bay, but completion of this step now will make any future property ownership transfers easier. So that's that.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right, is there anyone that would like to speak on this? Is there anyone looking to speak? Is there anyone looking to? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 14. Consideration with possible action on a request to rezone 501 South Washington Street from Public Institutional District to Downtown 1 District submitted by Community and Economic Development.
So since the rezone complies with the future land use map and complements surrounding land uses, and this is almost really a formality of the code, staff supports the request. Alder Johnson, the Downtown Neighborhood Association, and neighbors within 200 feet were notified, but I have not received any comments, so. We recommend approval. From PI to Downtown 1.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Rubinski, second by Commissioner Fullwilder. Any further discussion?
One quick question, is it on the historic register?
No, not eligible either.
Oh.
I've triple checked. It's lost too much integrity.
Oh.
So
There's nothing we can do to try to protect, like.
there's
If there's no integrity.
Yeah.
Protect at this point.
Stephanie, if I could maybe just add some clarity to that, one of the sort of contingencies that we put on this whole transaction was that whatever their redevelopment proposal is, that it would have to be approved, so. So like, while it doesn't, to Stephanie's point, it doesn't meet like all those requirements, like we can choose in whatever the development agreement is to. Sort of enforce certain protection measures, even if they wouldn't be in pure alignment, right, with SHPO.
Okay, probably as good as we're gonna get.
Better than we usually do.
Yeah, and part of that, right, is because we didn't want the default action to be to come in and tear it down, for example. Right, like we wanted to at least have a say to say, thanks, but no thanks, or
Right.
even like, yeah, we love your new proposal, so it gives us some leeway.
Okay. We did have a motion and a second. All right,
Second.
all right,
Sorry, take a second.
all right.
Good question.
I know, it's a really cool building. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, to city council then for January 21st. Oh, not a public hearing. All right, item number 15. Don't worry, there's another one yet. Don't worry about it. There's another one yet. Item number 15, consideration with possible action on the request to declare city-owned properties as surplus located at 0 Mason Way, submitted by Department of Community and Economic Development property owner.
Thank you. I think I should get brownie points for having the only non-public hearing item of the night.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So this is located along East Mason Street, Mason Way, and then Hireman Street here. You might recognize this location. There is a neighborhood sign located here. That is not part of this request at all. So just to squash any of those thoughts. This is designated as parkland. The Parks Department has no interest in making this parkland. So it really just sits as vacant green space that the city owns. Same with the zoning, has the PI district, but not necessarily any part of our parkland. So the parcel currently looks like this, as you can see the neighborhood sign here. And then where this home is, part of the garage and part of the driveway were built over the lot line onto city-owned property. That was done
a long time ago.
So it's
Oh
been
my
an existing
goodness.
condition. They had come in looking to pull a building permit to pave this. This is currently gravel and do some extra work. It's city-owned property, so they can't. In looking at that, we realized we don't have any use for this property. And since the existing condition does have that overlap here, which you can see, it is eligible for surplus. We asked all of our utility providers, other departments, everybody, if they have any claimed interest in this. Nobody has any need for this property at the city. And the only response back is a utility easement requirement from WPS for an existing line that they have there. So this would take a portion of 3 separate properties to make one new lot that would be adjoined to this parcel here. So basically, this lot would become this size in its entirety. So this portion in red gets surplus. It will be then combined with the parcel next door so that we can continue the improvements on his lot. So that leaves the green space at the corner, city owned for the neighborhood side. And this yellow area is where that easement would be required for that property. So we are requesting approval of the request. Oops, too fast. That this be disposition directed to the neighboring property owner, since that's what the request is for. The easement will be required for WPS facilities to be paid at the owner's expense at 1650 Mason Way. And that the CSM is required to combine those parcels once this is surplus, all that at the expense of the owner of that property. That's it.
Okay. So just out of curiosity, so are we just, not that we're just letting them have, I mean, it's friendly, because we weren't doing anything anyways, but do we just give that to them? I mean, they've got a bunch of costs involved that I'm sure aren't inexpensive.
Yes, so
I'm curious.
for other surplus applications, we have previously, because we can direct where that sale should go. We have in the past noted, hey, this should be at a discounted rate, or it should be at $1 or whatever. We opted not to get involved in that part of the discussion. We have a valuation in your staff report. I believe it's like $12,000 or so for all the property that's part of this request. Since, you know, it's an existing condition that they were built on there, and they would have to pay the portion for the CSM and then also for the easement.
Right.
It could definitely be at a lower price. There are some standing, what's that called? We've done this before, and they have a guesstimate of a price that they could get, precedence, yes. But that's usually after it gets approved by Plan Commission, City Council, it goes to our purchasing department, and they work through all of that. So if we want to put a value on it and say we should give it to them for $1.
I was
that
just
could
curious
move
at how it
forward,
worked, but yeah.
Yeah, so they start at the base valuation, and then we use our recommendations for other RDA parcels in the past to figure out how much we should be getting for that land.
So this was triggered because they went for a building permit, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes. All right.
Which is good. I mean, it'll get this off
It
of our
cleans it up.
property.
Yep.
Yes, it cleans
Yeah.
everything up.
Plus maintenance, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
No. Oh,
Plus maintenance
okay.
costs.
All right. I like it.
Motion to approve as recommended. Second.
Who are you gonna choose?
I'm gonna go to Alder. Yeah, we got a first by Commissioner Rubinstein, second by Alder Hutchinson.
I'm gonna try.
Cause he has, this is his first all day, so I was letting him have it. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, then moving on to the final public hearing of the evening. This public hearing has been properly posted, public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items, and we invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or only providing information. We also ask you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. We'll now open the public hearing on item number 16. Public hearing on a request to amend section 44-82 2D Green Bay Municipal Code, removing the sections related to the zoning amendment protest petition submitted by the City of Green Bay Law Department.
Bad luck.
Okay.
It'll make sense.
Okay.
So, thank you, Madam Chairperson. In 2023, the legislature adopted 2023 Wisconsin Act 16 in June, actually it was June of 23. And what that did is remove a requirement in the state statutes that would require a 3/4 vote of members of the council when there's a zoning amendment petition against it. So right now in our zoning code, when your zoning recommendation goes forward to the council, there's a certain criteria, and actually you can see it up here, it's crossed off.
Right.
20% of the landowners that own the property, 20% of those immediately adjacent or extending 100 feet, or 20% or more directly opposite, extending 100 feet, opposite of the street. So if you get a certain amount, 20% of those owners to object, formally object, the council has to have basically a super majority, a 2/3 majority to actually approve the zone change.
Okay.
So that's what's in the books, very common throughout the state. In 2017, legislator adopted Act 243, and this allowed the municipalities to remove that from their codes. City of Green Bay kept it, we still had it, rarely used, maybe a couple times that I can remember. Chris might remember what it was. But in 2023, under Act 16, they basically prohibited municipalities from doing this. So it's not that we want to or we don't want to, we are now allowed
We
to.
can't do it.
If you left it in the code, it could not be enforced, but you would probably have be giving people a thought they could do something that really they can't do. What it would basically end up doing is leaving the same language. This is under the zone change section, or administrative code for you guys. The common council of the plan commission upon designation by the common council shall hold a public hearing with class 2 public notice. The notice shall be published at least 2 times prior to the hearing. So that's kind of what we do. And then the rest of it is if there is a protest, this is what happens. So it's just being struck.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Let the record reflect that no one has come forward and the public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the last item and corresponding actionable item, item number 17. Consideration with possible action on a request to amend section 44-82D Green Bay Municipal Code, removing the sections related to the zoning amendment protest petition submitted by the City of Green Bay Law Department.
Staff recommend.
Excellent.
I won't do this one.
Somebody do it. I
You don't
can't.
want to do this? Anybody else want to get in on this? Get their name on the minutes?
Man.
No?
Somebody do it already.
Kelsey's point.
Fine, motion to approve. Ah. I want to give somebody else. I know, I did too.
No, but just be fast about it. That's all. All right, motion by Commissioner Vinsky, second by Commissioner Fullwilder. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving forward to the City Council of January 21st. Informational Director's Report.
All right, so we have a development tracker and it's late. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I don't have
So,
a full.
That Quick Trip on Mason, that is a huge site. There's a lot of green space on the back, isn't there? Because that's huge, like it is.
Large property.
All right, okay. I'm watching that.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Largest quick trip.
There was another piece.
Ever.
There's another piece.
Like
of
I have.
There's already a sign with a selfie option. It's not the biggest one, yeah.
But they do have water on site, and so it's more of an organized development, but it is, John.
It is a huge.
Yeah.
There was, you know what, there's another piece of land that I saw and I was like, oh, I keep on passing going to East High, that duplex, the townhomes on Walnut. East
Oh, yeah.
Walnut, but that's now they've got a basement in. All right, that's all that's all the excitement I've got.
A question of logistics between the two. Hopefully in action developments on Cherry. Like just movement around downtown. I don't think the other one's gonna start probably by draft time or anything like that. I don't think so. But
It doesn't. I guess, but.
just with the access to the ramp that's there, that's gotta be a headache, right? This is just.
Access should be maintained, the DPW will ensure that. From what we've been told.
So where are they gonna stage for all that stuff?
From what I understand, at least the new land project on the north side of Cherry, a lot of the staging they're able to maintain on site. They don't need a lot of, space off-site as far as, shutting down things. There might be, there already has been some. Yeah, it's been temporary, so they're trying their best to minimize impacts to the downtown, keep businesses, you know, open and happy. It is a challenge, you're correct, but, we're doing our best to get through it after this is all said and done. We'll have hundreds of new residents downtown, the businesses, so there's some growing pains for sure.
I don't know who those contractors are, but they were out there today,
They're out there.
working like crazy, and I was out for about 5 minutes and I was free.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're moving. Literally moving there.
They were out on, I think New Year's Day, they were out.
Really? They were?
Yeah, they were really going to town.
Yeah. Can't believe the house is torn down. I literally drive, you know what, I'm always looking at your house, that's why I'm like, oh, and Emma's house, and I'm completely ignoring that side of the street. How did I probably stopped at an intersection today under that. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Motion to
No,
adjourn?
wait. Oh, no, 20 I'm sorry.
Sorry.
That was the direction, report. All right. Nice. I appreciate that. 2025 Plan Commission meeting schedule and deadlines.
Yep, so you'll have two things in your packet. One is just, you can kind of see the application deadline, plan commission, then the council dates. Nice to have, kind of shoot that out. And there's another thing that I added in there too, and it's really a lot of the community development ones. Every once in a while you hear about a redevelopment authority needing to see something, their schedule is on there. Board of Appeals, their schedule is on there. So, just something to reference.
Excellent. Date of the next meeting, January 27th, 2025.
That'll be canceled.
What?
We have no applications for that meeting, but at this point, we're likely gonna cancel, although we need to talk about that.
Okay.
So maybe February.
24.
I'm gonna get it
Well,
canceled.
I mean, it's maybe 2 meetings, so.
Right. I feel like the last 2 meetings being 3.5 hours each, next meeting of like 45 minutes, that'd be cool.
Now, one time we had a 16-minute meeting.
I know.
Again, it is difficult, so some of these meetings become very long because there's a month in between council.
I can't even say the public hearing thing 10 times.
I know, well,
That-
and
that-
my goal with that is, Lisa, is to shrink that down.
Can we do something where it thanks what she has to say, but also have like a reminder on the screen that says like.
If they had,
timer at
like,
3 minutes,
honestly,
like, or something just to remind.
If this thing, the no questions asked, and we just had a words on a screen so that people could.
Speak one, like bullet, will speak one time.
Yeah.
Let's just do it at that time. On the record, I said that, I meant it.
We will talk about a lot of.
I am going to examine how the council does their public hearing, and we're gonna copy that.
Alright.
Much less,
Got one motion
Motion of what?
to adjourn.
Oh, yes, second.
Should make Commissioner Vitzke second. But
Whatever.
Vice Chair Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night.